And my fear as a Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development is that this outcome might discourage many who have been brave enough to stand against the most powerful people to give testimony in court, some in the most discomfort way, where they exposes themselves to public scrutiny of what has happened. And that's why we stand to understand what has happened, what went wrong, and therefore how do we move forward in assuring the country that we are serious as government in dealing with GBV and femicide cases, but most importantly, to convince the nation that we are serious about protecting and eroding gender-based violence in our society. We can't continue to protect perpetrators, but more, we need to stand with victims. We must be victim-centric in our approach, but understand the plight of those who go through this torture, who go through this difficulty. As I say, listening to the judge was the most painful thing for me as a minister overseeing this portfolio. I can't avert responsibility. I cannot shield myself from taking accountability and being accountable to South African society, especially listening to that judgment. It's a moment for all of us in this portfolio to reflect and to say, what is it that we're going to do better, to rebuild confidence of South Africans in the justice system of this country. And that, it starts with me, and I will be addressing this matter later once I receive the report in what needs to be done and what I have done as the executive authority in this portfolio. Thank you.
Okay, I wonder what you make of that. I think that level of honesty and concession that something's gone wrong here, coming from the minister, and effectively suggesting that everybody involved in the judiciary has to take responsibility, I think is refreshing. It's so important, but it also reflects a damning position with regard to that particular case, where the judge did not say at all that the issue of Omotoso is because, he was found not guilty, not because he was not guilty, but effectively the evidence gathering and investigation was completely botched. And when you hear things like that, especially in a country with a high crime rate as we have, and the issues of high gender-based violence that we have, and then you find somebody gets off scot-free and gets sent off on the next plane off to Nigeria because of something botched up from our side, that must anger you in the same way that you'd be angry about so many other things, like including, possibly a 1 or 2% hike with regard to that, and we know the responses we get around that, okay? So this is the National Pulse. Welcome to the show. My name's Ashraf Garda. Yesterday was some show, wasn't it? Crossing to Parliament just about every minute of the show. Today, lots of reaction. We will, and in fact, get further reaction on that pronouncement by the Justice Minister later on, because I think it's so important, but I want to get your thoughts on that too. We will also reflect on the different issues and the intricacies that have developed around the budget speech and who said what and what this really means for the future. Amongst many other guests, we'll chat to Professor Stephen Friedman as well later on. And by the way, regarding mentioned trade wars, we'll chat to Clayson Moliera coming up shortly. But before all of that, let's reflect on, the tariffs or the trade wars that may emerge from that, with Thembisa Fakude, who's a senior research fellow and director at AfriCIT. Thembisa, appreciate your time as always. Thanks for connecting on the National Pulse. Okay, Thembisa, do we have you then? Maybe not. Not for the moment. Let me just remind you, when you were calling in, if you're first of all listening in for the very first time, I want to know about it. Tell me you're listening in now. Let me give you a shout out, okay? And you can do that by a quick text message, which is 0614 104 107. And on that same number, you can also send us a WhatsApp voice note, if you like, to call in 086 000 2032. And do not forget to use the hashtag The National Pulse when you're tweeting, and tag SAFM Radio and myself, Ashraf Garda. And I say use that hashtag because what I've done in the last day or two, I've realized and maybe made obvious what I've always felt, that the National Pulse is not just what happens on air 3 to 6, but it's 24/7. So what I'm going to do, and I want to ask you to do so as well, whenever you find something particularly on the X platform, of newsworthiness that you think we need to be talking about on this show, just tag, just quote tweet that particular post and tag SFM Radio and myself with the hashtag The National Pulse, so we can pick it up and we can share that to a broader audience as well. Okay, right. I think we've got Thembisa Fakula. We don't have him. We had him for a second. We just lost him. We'll certainly get back to that just now. Perhaps maybe if you wish to make a quick call and give me your quick reaction to what the Minister of Justice said regarding the issue of the Nigerian pastor Timothy Omotoso. I can maybe take a couple of calls very quickly on that, or alternatively even a very quick WhatsApp voice note, but I think calls will be better. Okay, put that on pause. Things change overnight, or a few seconds away. Thembisa Fakula back with us now. Thembisa, appreciate your time here on the National Pulse.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Right, so a lot has happened. I mean, yesterday in clearly what is a dramatic but not unexpected day with Donald Trump announcing, tariff changes on goods from countries that they do business with and reciprocal tariffs. First things first, I mean, what did he decide about South Africa? And explain what that really means for us.
Well, we're also impacted. Is issued or declared 30% tariff increase to South Africa, so we are going to be impacted. We're still not sure what's going to happen with our membership in AGOA, whether that's going to give us relief or not. But as it stands, we were included with countries such as Cambodia and others. So it's bad news for those that has been exporting goods to the United States from South Africa.
So practically what it means, if you're selling goods for, let's say, 10,000 rands, then the USA will slap a 60% tariff on that 10,000 rands. Is that correct? So it'll be more expensive for whoever in America is importing those goods, right?
Tariffs are taxes. So it means that there's going to be 30% more over and above the taxes that are already imposed on goods. Now, the biggest question that everyone is asking, whether the tariffs are going to be absorbed by the importers, in this case the companies in the United States, because the complaint is that Donald Trump is simply overburdening the consumers in the United States. So the new discussion that's now taking place is who's supposed to absorb these tariffs. Is it going to be the importers, or is the importer going to add on the 30% markup to make up for the tax that or the tariffs that they'll be paying?
All right, and of course I said 60% a moment ago. In fact, what I saw in that listing was that, yes, it's 30% of this tariff or tax for South African goods, but the table suggested that South Africa is charging 60%, and I heard from others that actually is incorrect. What's your understanding of that?
Well, it's not charging, it's 30%. So what has been happening with AGOA, of course, is that all of these were relaxed before, so we could export goods from South Africa without any tariffs. And that's why this has become a big discussion, whether with AGOA in place and South Africa being a full member who's not expelled and still supposed to benefit at least from certain products coming from South Africa to AGOA, how are those products going to be impacted by this decision of Trump yesterday?
Interesting, and we're going to chat to Clayson Moniela just now. In fact, he's already tweeted saying AGOA is dead.
Yeah, but we haven't had any proper communication. And again, AGOA, by the way, is not a blanket tariff-free all goods from South Africa. There are certain products that are given exemption. So we'll have to hear what that means with the new tariffs that have been imposed by Trump. Does it mean that AGOA is dead, or does it mean that we're going to have a 30% tariff on the products that are already being exported to the United States? So it's a big question. We'll have to wait for clarification, but I don't see the clarification coming anytime soon, given what we've seen with Donald Trump in the past.
Okay, now understandably, a lot of our focus would be on South Africa, but the reality is, as many have suggested, these tariff changes and increases could well spark off a global trade war. Explain what that means.
Well, it means there's going to be tit for tat. I mean, South Africa is expected to also impose tariffs to the American products coming our way, and all of these other countries that have been slapped with these tariffs are going to be doing the same. Now the question is, what will be the role of the World Trade Organization henceforth? If you're going to have Trump taking his unilateral decisions and deciding how business is supposed to be done throughout the world, notwithstanding, of course, that he remain, or at least the United States remain part of the World Trade Organization, what's the use of that platform henceforth? Because that platform was basically meant to introduce and maintain some sort of harmony within the signatories and countries around the world. But what we see, what Trump is doing at the moment, I think throws everything out the window.
I noticed someone saying the other day, I mean, if these tariffs are taxes, and if one country charges a 30% tariff and the other does the 30%, effectively they tend to neutralize each other, unless, of course, one country is importing far more than the other. But is there a case for doing away with tariffs completely? I mean, that's a broader conversation, I know, but what's your thoughts on that?
Well, there's no case, but I think what Trump misses the point that when these tariffs were decided upon, this is case to case. On case-to-case basis. So it was negotiated. His assumption is that all previous administrations were fools who entered into this arrangement without taking into consideration that the United States was taken for granted. But it's not true. Some of these tariffs were meant to protect the importers. Some of these tariffs were meant to protect the exporters, and they were agreed upon. So whereas you'll have, for example, some countries imposing 60% tariffs from United States, or United States imposing 60% tariffs from those countries, all of these had a lot to do with either protecting the exporters or facilitating business for importers from whatever country that was. So all of these were taken into consideration, and they were decided dependent on the scarcity, dependent on trying to protect the market and avoid further exploitation of certain markets, particularly in South Africa, for example. Our textile industry has always been vulnerable, so you had to come up with tariffs. It had nothing to do with trying to impose or prevent business with other countries, but it was a lot to do with trying to protect ourselves from imports that were coming our way very fast and quick, particularly from China.
I think those Chinese imports in the manufacturing industry is a good example that happened just around the turn of democracy. Appreciate your time, Thembisa Fakhuria. Lots to consider there, and I think it's understandable when we say trade wars. Where will all of this end? Look out for Clayson Monyela after this.
What? Don't wake up to less money or no money in your account. Add an extra layer of security for unusual transactions. Nominate a trusted person on the Standard Bank banking app. If something seems off, they can decline transactions for you, even while you sleep. Get Trusted Person on your banking app today. Visit our help center on the banking app to learn more. Another lesson to #BeatTheScam. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matric, mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bucky to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
If we have rights, shouldn't we also have opinions? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Okay, so let's move on. In many ways, these are issues that must be linked. We chat to Clayson Monyela, who's the DIRCO Deputy Director General and Head of Public Diplomacy. Clayson, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Ashraf, it's good to be on your show.
It's about time. I mean, I can't just be on Twitter with you. I mean, this is a lot more effective, don't you think, right? Yeah.
Indeed.
Okay, listen, we're going to talk about the visit of the South African delegation to the USA, but let's start with your latest tweet. AGOA is dead. Explain.
I didn't tweet that.
I think I saw that. Somebody said that and related to you, no?
No. I certainly haven't tweeted that. The review for AGOA is up later in the year. So the U.S. has not yet done that review in terms of which countries they're going to retain as part of AGOA, or whether they're going to retain AGOA at all. We don't know. There's a lot of unknowns with the current people that we're dealing with. So we will wait for them to do that review and inform us as to which countries will still be eligible for AGOA. Here's the point that we always make on AGOA. That it would be a bit curious to have AGOA continuing at the exclusion of South Africa, because many of the countries, certainly in sub-Saharan Africa, utilize South Africa's infrastructure to trade with the U.S. and other regions of the world. So you can't have South African infrastructure being utilized to trade and benefiting from AGOA, and you have South Africa excluded. But we'll leave the review to them and see what the decision is. But they haven't done that as yet.
Okay, let's then get on to, we know there were issues about tariff changes, and I won't touch on that now because we had a chat with Tembisa Fakudi about that. But the South African delegation meeting with U.S. officials, what has come out of that?
Look, this was a very timely and perhaps long overdue engagement with our American counterparts at the levels at which we engaged, because the point of departure is that the South Africa-U.S. relationship is one that we value. It is a mutually beneficial relationship. It benefits both countries and the people of both countries. So this is a much treasured relationship. The U.S. is our second biggest trading partner after China. So we went to New York. Firstly, we had a briefing to the United Nations General Assembly to brief them on South Africa's G20 presidency, our theme, our priorities, and what we seek to achieve, and got overwhelming support from the UN member states. We then proceeded to Washington, where we had meetings at the State Department, at the White House, at the Treasury Department, with key and influential senior people. And the point that we were making, one was to clarify and answer questions and dispel misinformation and misconceptions about what's currently happening in South Africa, be it on the Expropriation Act and other matters that have been raised around targeting of minorities, which is completely not true. Chaotic land grabs that are not happening. So it was a good meeting because it allowed us to have face-to-face interactions and contextualize and explain things. And we found them to be very receptive and welcoming of this long overdue engagement.
I think the big issue is not so much whether they are receptive or welcoming, but how does it translate to Donald Trump himself being receptive or welcoming, considering what's very clear at the moment is that he makes decisions very much by decree, all on his own.
So what was important for us is that the people we met with and engaged with sit in the rooms when some of these key decisions are taken, number one. Number two, some of them are key advisors. And what you don't want is for decisions to be taken purely on the basis of wrong or misinformation that we have seen being peddled, even by some groupings in South Africa with agendas that are very clear that they are not progressive and helpful to where South Africa seeks to go. So in as much as you have this very peculiar arrangement currently with the administration, we believe that these meetings were important in that these people sit in the rooms where decisions are taken. Of course, this is not going to stop here. We are going to continue to engage at various levels because you should never get tired of explaining in the current context.
And in terms of the issues that you raised earlier on, what may have happened regarding Ambassador Ibrahim Rasool and the issues of expropriation and, the ongoing issues that Donald Trump mentioned even last night, lots of bad things happening in South Africa. Were you able to turn that perception around? Because, it's a case of now who said and said what?
Yeah, we did, because this was a key issue, because the reality is there are no bad things happening in South Africa. And by the way, the U.S. has a similar legislation like the Expropriation Act. And we also made this important point that even on the rare occasions where the categories of land that are referred to in the Act, like for example, where it's state-owned land or it's a land owned by an individual that's not being used or developed, that's just being held for speculative reasons, and there's a decision to expropriate that individual that is affected still has recourse. You can still approach courts of law, which are independent arbiters for such matters. So it's not like a government can wake up one day and say, we're going after your property and you have no recourse, which is important. And it was important to explain this. And this idea that there is nil compensation, it's also not true. You know that the Act makes space for market-related prices to be paid where there's a decision to expropriate. So these were important conversations, and we've been able to, in our view, demystify, expel, dispel, and clarify misinformation and misconceptions.
Perhaps maybe the last thing for now. I mean, I think all of us have been, shocked and surprised by Donald Trump's almost daily pronouncements about South Africa in the last month. So, but at the same time, what is clear is a response to right-wing conservative groups from South Africa who've actually made those regular visits to the USA, right? With hindsight, when one reflects on that, you say, does that mean that maybe perhaps we were A, caught on the back foot, right? Even though the perceptions were not true, but we caught on the back foot, and B, that needs to be greater lobbying, certainly from government and say organizations and departments like yours in the future?
Look, we've got an embassy in Washington, D.C. with a group of diplomats, dedicated diplomats, who work on the South Africa-U.S. relationship on a daily basis. They've got regular meetings with key and influential people, think tanks, people at the State Department, White House, all the key departments in the U.S., including business. There's a South Africa-U.S. Chamber of Business community that also interacts regularly. I wouldn't say we're caught off guard, because this is work that we do on a daily basis. But clearly, there's a need to intensify and rebut the very deliberate misinformation campaign that we can see at play. Of course, the other element, which we will not say loudly, is that part of the people that have the ear of the current administration are South Africans who have a particular interesting past and perhaps hangover of what used to be happening in this country. So we are aware of all of these factors, and it's something that we continue to work on. We will not get tired of clarifying and telling the truth about what is happening in South Africa. South Africa is blessed with a population that is geared at moving forward and wants to take this country forward as a united society and reject these tendencies to divide us.
And long may that be strengthened. I think that's so important, not just internally, but I think that push has got to be strengthened globally as well. Clayson Moniela, for now, appreciate your time. JERCO Deputy Director General and the Head of Public Diplomacy. Right, let's get the news headlines. Here's Jolani Tulo.
Top stories this hour. The Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mamoloko Kubai, has requested a comprehensive report from the National Director of Public Prosecutions on why the state failed to prove its case beyond reasonable doubt in the case of televangelist Timothy Omotoso. Omotoso and his co-accused Lusanda Sulani and Zuki Swasito were acquitted on all the charges by the Gqeberha High Court yesterday. The chairperson of the DA's Federal Council, Helen Ziller, has filed papers in the Western Cape High Court to urgently interdict the implementation of the 0.5 percentage point VAT increase. The increase is supposed to come into effect on the 1st of May. And finally, China has angrily condemned U.S. President Donald Trump's announcement of swinging tariff increases on imports from around the world. China faces an overall tariff of 54%. I will have details on these and other stories at 4 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
View, queuing on the link to the N12 East at Gillilees interchange, and the M2 westbound in Crown has delays towards Main Reef Road. In KZN, the M4 northbound has a crash reported at Glen Ashley. The N2 southbound has a crash after the M41 gateway exit, and the N3 northbound has a crash recovery underway near Tugela Toll Plaza, so expect delays. In the Free State, on the N3, a truck crashed south of Warden, causing traffic moving via contraflow on the southbound carriageway. This is causing some heavy delays. In Cape Town, the N2 inbound has a crash after Spine Road exit. All lanes are open. The M5 northbound slow moving towards the N1 Koeberg interchange, and slow moving traffic reported in the Waterfront precinct, so expect delays. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
So what does our very own Minister of Sport have to say today to me?
A lot to look forward to today. A very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and our listeners. The South African under-17 men's team, Amajimbos, they play their second Africa Cup of Nations game against Cameroon in Casablanca today to seal their qualification for the under-17 FIFA World Cup in Qatar. Now, this is the intention of Amajimbos head coach Vela Khumalo as they go for their second win in Group B after beating Egypt 4-3 in a high-scoring match on Monday. Out of 16 teams in the competition, 10 will qualify for the World Cup, with the top 2 teams in the groups guaranteed direct qualification.
We take game at a time, one game at a time, and yes, we would love to be in the World Cup, but we then say let's win the first game and let's get to the next game, and before we can even think of going to the semi-finals, the quarter-finals, first thing first, and the first thing would be qualifying for the World Cup, which is our main target. And going through, we'll see how it goes.
Right, kickoff is at 4 p.m. and South Africa are currently leading Group B, level on points with Burkina Faso in second on 3 points. Meanwhile, Mamelodi Sundowns will cooperate with the Confederation of African Football in its investigation into the violence that unfolded after the Champions League quarter-final first leg against Esperance de Tunis at Loftus on Tuesday. There were ugly scenes as supporters clashed violently in the stands after the match, in which Sundowns secured a 1-0 win. Now, Downs, as the home side, said they are apologizing in the spirit of the African culture of compassion, though they alleged that the evidence pointed to Esperance supporters initiating the incident. Elsewhere, Owen De Gama was named Betway Premiership Coach of the Month for March. This is after guiding Magezi to 4 wins in 5 outings. Magezi goalkeeper Elvis Chipezeze received the Betway Premiership Player of the Month for March award after keeping 4 clean sheets in 5 matches. In cricket, the Proteas will tour India in an all-format tour in November and December. India will host South Africa in 2 tests, 3 ODIs and 5 T20s between the 14th of November and the 19th of December. The test series will mark a historic moment, with Guwahati set to host its first ever test match. In rugby, Blitzbox Siviwe Soizwapi says that he expects a fresh effort and focus from South Africa in Singapore this week to finish the regular World Rugby season strong. Now, Soizwapi says what happened in Hong Kong stayed in Hong Kong, and the squad arrived in Singapore for the 6th leg of the 2024-25 campaign with a clear mission, hoping to repeat the glories of 2004 and 2019 when the South Africans left the National Stadium as champions. In terms of the Blitzbox, they face first Great Britain and then Argentina. In tennis, Emma Raducanu has withdrawn from next week's Billie Jean King Cup qualifiers to rest. This is following her run to the quarterfinals in Miami, where she needed medical attention during her defeat to Jessica Peguela. Raducanu dropped the opening set and appeared out of sorts while up 5-4 in the second, requiring a medical timeout, during which she had her legs and back iced before the 22-year-old eventually lost 6-4, 6-7 and 6-2. On that note, it is a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour.
Perfect. So lots to consider. But by the way, I was seeing, I know we discussed it yesterday about these, about the security and who's in charge, but the other point that you brought up about the 2 different clubs and how they take responsibility, I mean, the level of violence, whatever provoked it, I don't really know, right? Let the investigation come. But the fact that supporters can throw flares down, that is where, I must tell you, as a football lover, more than rugby, we've got a history of that around the world, actually. And it's hugely problematic, and it can't continue, but it does. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, more sport in an hour. In fact, to me, you've got some breaking news, yeah?
Yes, I have breaking news. And this is sad news, I guess, for Orlando Pirates fans, because Orlando Pirates now has confirmed that Jose Rivero will be stepping down from his position as the head coach at the end of the season.
But you're saying it with such a smile. I mean, the audience can't see unless they're listening on streaming live. There's like a warmth and smile in your voice, in your face.
It's not a smile out of I'm making fun of the club or I'm happy. It's just out of shock.
Yeah.
No one would have expected.
Did he allude to that?
So from what I'm seeing is that Rivera has informed management of his decision to not renew his contract beyond its current term. There actually were rumors that he might just leave, but here it is. It's confirmed.
Okay, that is absolutely a big deal indeed. Orlando Pirates having lots of issues on the field and off the field as well in this case. Right, more sport about Pirates and more in an hour.
Get down to Dis-Chem Pharmacies for awesome autumn savings for the whole family. Get 20% off Blade 260ml shave gels. Buy any 2 Safeguard Hygienic 1-litre shower and bath gels for only 110 Rand. Save 49 Rand 98. And get 20% off Dental Mate mouthwashes. Don't miss out. Offers valid until Sunday, 13 April. Only at Dis-Chem Pharmacies. Better health starts here.
What is your money doing right now? Is it lazing around in that other account because you're not sure where to move it for premium growth? Well, let's make it work hard in a Standard Bank Money Market Select investment account, where we'll grow it with a nominal interest of up to 7.9% on a minimum deposit of 100,000 Rand. Plus, you get access to your funds anytime. Open yours online or on our app today. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Hi, I'm Zycard. Catch me every Saturday from 7 to 9 p.m. on Spotlight as we bring you blow-by-blow sporting action, news. That's Spotlight every Saturday. You don't want to miss it.
Are we ready for a real conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. You're listening to the National Pulse.
So Pirates looking for a new coach. Would they go for Gavin Hunt? I don't know. I'm just thinking about it. Right. The way we talk, the show is called The Pulse of the Nation. What about the pulse of the public service and what we feel about the public service? I suppose the pulse of the public service report should tell us a lot. Now, the Public Service Commission held a press briefing today on the quarterly bulletin titled The Pulse of the Public Service. They looked at many issues. I can't go to all of it, but I'll tell you what, 2 issues are particularly important. The issues of the protection of whistleblowers, very important, and the other one, the issues of non-payment of service providers. You know, those are real bugbears that really does impact and undermine society, okay? Let's get the thoughts then of Vusimusi Mavusa, who's the commissioner at the Public Service Commission. Appreciate your time, and thanks for connecting to us here on the National Pulse, Vusimusi.
A very good afternoon to you and your listeners. Yes, I'm actually excited to be part of the engagement, to be able to talk about the pulse of the public service, the heartbeat of the nation. Yep.
On the National Pulse, I may add. Okay, right, there we are. Okay, let's zone in. Firstly, well, maybe before we zone in, give us perhaps an overview of what's come out of the report.
Well, we covered quite a broad area of activities and actions. For example, one of the important ones was the passing of the Public Service Commission bill, which has been long in the making in order to be able to provide us with an extended mandate to can be able to have a reach into local government, to deal with state-owned entities, both at municipal, provincial and national level, which for us is quite an important development. The second one, of course, was to talk about the importance of strengthening the whistleblower protection and the non-payment of suppliers. But the overall point was to deal with complaints and grievances that we normally handle on a daily and monthly basis and be able to submit a quarterly report of what has transpired. These were the broad areas that we spoke of. We had a brief introduction around the fiscal consolidation for the efficient, economic and effective use of resources in a declining economy, what that entails for public service in the main, and not deal with the politics thereof, of course.
So let's then talk about the two issues that I raised in the intro, the issue of whistleblowers and your commission calling for the establishment of the Whistleblower Protection House. I would have thought we have it already, but tell me more.
Just to give a brief background, we had a symposium sometime in 2023 to be able to deal with a whole range of issues pertaining to the protection of whistleblowers. This was quite a far-reaching engagement, which involved the then Minister of Justice. It was Minister Ronald Lamola. But subsequent to that, it therefore became quite imperative, especially after we saw a litany of whistleblowers being, others had been, cruelly assassinated, and in some instances, others had been put into situations whereby they can't even eke out a living, and a whole range of issues came about. For us to be able to make a difference, especially in the fight against the scourge of corruption, there must be a means and a mechanism of protecting whistleblowers to make sure that they can be able to come and provide evidence in court, whether it is in camera or in which way that is deemed necessary under those circumstances. That protection is important. We are of the view that if we can be able to have safe houses for these whistleblowers, remove them away from the societies in which they are for their own protection, be able to provide them with the necessary support whilst they're preparing to go through the motions of the litigations, and be able to ensure that they can be able to do the job that the nation requires, protecting the interests of the nation.
And these safe houses, I mean, what do we have right now then?
Look, we spoke much more broadly about what we think could be the right thing to do, because it will require provision of financial assistance, legal counsel, psychological support, and all these particular matters, because indeed their plight is quite dire. The extent to which this will be built and how that is going to be arranged should be left to the experts. We're merely explicating the issues, putting them in the public discourse for them to be much more ameliorated and discussed, for solutions to be provided. I must indicate that the Department of Justice is on top of this matter. They're buying into the idea of making sure that we have this matter, because it will require the broad spectrum of the criminal justice system to be on board, to provide the necessary support, protection, and be able to provide that psychological support, because in some instances, people are terribly devastated psychologically.
Absolutely.
Out of fear of what may happen and all that.
Well, I mean, as you know, as you mentioned, we've had people who have assassinated, many of them, and then others who've lived to tell the tale, people like Athol Williams who've had to leave the country, and that's just completely unacceptable. Let's then talk about another thing that's unacceptable, the issue of non-payment of service providers. What's your position on that?
Look, this can't be countenanced. For us, we can safely say that it borders on nothing else but criminality. I'm sketching a very horrible situation here. We've seen a number of service providers, others going down under, because they could not really survive under the circumstances in which they find themselves in. They provide a service to departments don't pay them on time. The Public Finance Management Act makes it very clear that service providers have to be paid within 30 days of the provision of services. We have broken our own record as the Public Service Commission because we pay within 14 days. So 30 days should not be seen as a target. There must be an intention. There ought to be intentionality of making sure that service providers are paid on time, especially when the service has been rendered. Remember, the crux of the matter is to be able to say, were you happy with the services that were provided? If so, why don't you pay? So in certain instances, you find that others are really dabbling and trying to struggle around their accruals that they may be having as departments and dilly-dallying on paying service providers the funds. In some instances, you find that they would rather pay Paul after stealing from Peter, or if I may say, taking from Peter. That is not acceptable. You ask for a service, it is provided, pay for it. What we believe should happen now is consequence management. We are going to hold accounting officers accountable for non-payment of suppliers. It can't really continue in this kind of trajectory anymore. We have to bring it to a grinding halt. This is our commitment. This is what we intend doing. But of course, it's important to raise these matters with the respective executive authorities, your ministers, your MECs, and everybody else who's got a responsibility. Because how else do you measure someone's performance if they fail to do such a task as to pay suppliers? It can't be right.
And I mean, from what you can understand, I mean, you made the point about the different executive authorities, right? But do you get a sense then that the delays in payments are for reasons beyond the obvious? Like, that means it can be easily tightened up here?
For me, where I'm seated, I think it can be done. We are then pushed into a situation whereby we tend to suspect that something untoward is happening, whatever it may be. So we'd rather go and do a thorough investigation and be able to come up with a credible outcome in terms of a report to say, this is what we found out. It may well be that there are people who really benefit out of these kinds of delays for whatever reason. Maybe, who knows, there could be cartels or probably mafias who have a way of making sure that they get a particular percentage for whatever payments that have been done. I'm saying within the public service. That will have to be investigated. We can't necessarily find or maybe put our finger on the pulse as to what is happening. We can only suspect.
Okay, well,
but we can't really base our arguments on suspicions.
Well, point taken. Let's leave it at that. Fingers on the pulse, isn't it? Vusimusi Mavuso, the Commissioner of the Public Service Commission. Two important issues: establishment of the Whistleblower Protection House, and then really escalating the issue of actually paying service providers ASAP in the 19 departments that are linked to the Public Service Commission. Do you get a sense of your fingers on the pulse? Let's get your thoughts right after this.
CFI, a global leader in online trading, is now in South Africa. Access 15,000 plus instruments, currencies, stocks, metals, crypto CFDs, indices, futures, and more on world-class platforms. Enjoy zero pip spreads, no commission fees, and 24/7 support for confident trading. Visit CFI.trade for a secure, transparent trading experience. Don't miss the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda, Tuesdays at 16:45. Proudly sponsored by CFI, CFI Financial, an authorized financial services provider. T's and C's apply.
SAFM music, crafted to make you feel real good. Handpicked just for your pleasure. Classics sounding so good, only on SAFM. Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107. Call us on 086 000 2032.
Okay, time for me to get a sense of your pulse and what does it tell you? Okay, fingers on your pulse. Let's get to calls. Amotoso's issue is big. Motaung in Bethlehem, go for it. What's your point?
Ashraf, good afternoon, and good afternoon to the listeners of the National Pulse.
Thank you.
Rocks.
Perfect.
That rocks.
Thank you.
You know what, Ashraf? My belief is we have been howling and begging the government to look into officers who are assigned to do these serious investigations of high crimes. South Africa has got a problem of not employing enough police officers. That's point number one. Point number two, South Africa is not paying enough attention in professionalizing our investigation officers. Now, the success of a prosecution, it depends on how beautiful the case has been stated into the prosecution offices, and the prosecution itself should be able to communicate with the investigating officers to get that document correct. Now, as long as our government is not open as to our that, strengthen the police force, strengthen the sector of investigations, and make sure that you empower the public prosecution. Ashraf, right now I was at our police station. I was talking to a man who is carrying about 78 dockets, which dates as far back as 5 years. He says he's handling them by himself. He's alone in there because his other colleagues are also overburdened as such.
Okay.
Now, as long as that problem is not really resolved, the minister better go and look into the police and also the national prosecution.
Okay.
That is my take, Ashraf.
Well, you certainly have made a point, and I think many people share in your, not just your take, but the absolute frustration. It's come from the minister as well to say, how can such a case like this be botched up? Really, because of just inefficiency, by and large, in the entire, evidence gathering, investigative process, and pure understanding of the task at hand. That's for a high-profile case. The big lesson is, what about all the others we don't even know about? Mandla in Cape Town, what's your point?
Yeah, Ashraf, my brother.
Yeah.
On this guy of DECO,
Yeah.
coming to talk nonsense here, saying there's a unity in South Africa. Where is the unity? And they say they met with Americans and tried to explain. What were they explaining there? They have failed as government, Ramaphosa, to sit down with AfriForum and the Afrikaner community to try and lay fear that they have of from Malema chanting "Kill the Boer, kill the." They have failed. In fact, it takes a leader to unite the nation. The nation cannot just unite by itself. A leader must unite. There's no leadership in South Africa, a lack of leadership. Everyone is doing what he likes. Ramaphosa is nowhere to be seen. I mean, the Khoisan community leadership were camping there in the union building for a year, if not two.
Okay.
Ramaphosa didn't care about them. There's no leadership.
Okay, Mandla, you made your point very strongly. Well, I mean, if you go back to Kali Kriel of AfriForum, and I suppose for a while we haven't spoken about this again, he made the point on many of the issues, and I'm not saying he's right about what they believe in, but he said they reached out to government regarding the Bella Bill and regarding other things too, and effectively they were, cold-shouldered or what's the word? Ghosted, isn't it? I mean, that's my words, okay? Basically kept away. Do you think that is the case? And if so, how much has that cost us? And I'm saying if that's the case, but whatever has happened, is it about time? And I go back to the Mandela era of speaking to a person like Betsy Verwoerd, for example. Is it about time now to say, hold it, if the ANC and the DA can sit together where they never thought they would, and Action SA and the ANC can sit together where Mashaba's threatened, I'll never talk to these people, is it about time that the president speaks to AfriForum effectively on the premise of nation building, no matter how we've differed so much over the last few months? Point made, taken. Right, another comment on the judiciary. Anonymous, go for it.
Well, how are you, sir?
I'm good indeed, right? What's your point?
Good. I'm a member in the 29th Court. I want to report this judge who's incompetent, who never opposed his opposition when he was at the funeral of fishing laws. Then he failed to report that thing or at court. Now, his name is Judge Peter Ikun Modusani. That's how I would like to be anonymous because I don't want to be victimized there at the 29th Court. And the other thing, he had twisted his judgment against the case that he was presiding of Mr. Siemens. He spoke about things that were never said by the witnesses. And you must remember the judiciary is the three arm of the state.
Yeah, okay. Your lines are breaking up towards the end, so we didn't pick up the last bit. But okay, I think the initial point made, taken. Thank you for that. Let's get back now to some of the other comments we've got, including, right, we've got a call, in fact, Zweli in KZN. Hi, Zweli.
Ashraf, how are you?
Yeah,
sir?
very good to talk to you. Go for it, Zweli. What's your point?
Fine, thank you. Listen, Ashraf, I'd like to apologize for my poor system where I am right now, the network. But if you're hearing me, I'll be happy about it. I just want to raise just two things. First of all, I'm flabbergasted about what happened in Omotoso's case. For 8 years really, if you are thinking in your sober senses, 8 years, people are failing the people who have been going through a lot. Those girls, those young women who were subjected into humiliation, into excruciating pain of coming into the public and speak about this Omotoso guy, and only to find that the people who are incompetent, they have been put in the judicial system to deal with these people. They are failing the nation. Now, Ashraf, you tell me, is that competence or incompetence when a prosecutor has been doing errors? Why was she not removed from the case so that the case can be handled in a proper professional manner?
Well, I mean, your point is right, the why, but you see, here's the point. Isn't this a reflection of so many appointments we've got wrong? And as a result of that, we've compromised service delivery in many aspects of our country. And that's just unacceptable. That's why we have what we have. Swelly? Yep. Yeah.
You know what, for the last time, please, don't cut me off. You know what? I think this thing of paying for work, for jobs, whereby you go into a certain window and leave a brown envelope, that is why we don't have really good people who are dealing with the cases. Then the last one, Ashraf, about this AfriForum. You know, really, I don't know why AfriForum is still existing in this country of ours. There are many good Afrikaner people that I know. Ek is a swart Afrikaner myself. Now, when they say they are standing for the Afrikaner, are they also standing for me as a black person? Ek is a swart Afrikaner.
Okay.
Van KZN. Are they really standing for me as well? Those colors in the Eastern Cape, those colors in Khalifstal, those colors everywhere, are they also standing for them? Or they are just standing for their own greed and everything like that?
Okay, I think you know the answer to that anyway, isn't it? As you asked the question, I do get a sense you know the answer. Thanks for raising all those issues. There's lots to come out of that one. Once again, the issue of service delivery. But I mean, here's the point about AfriForum. As per the previous caller, seriously, I mean, should Ramaphosa and AfriForum be having this chat? I mean, if South Africa can be having a chat with the USA, no matter what their president is telling the world about us, should be having a chat with AfriForum, no matter what. Even if you think they're completely wrong. Just think about it. Let's get the news. It's 4 o'clock. Here's Jolani.
Thanks, Ashraf. Top stories. The Sawa Justice Minister requests report on Omotoso case, and China condemns Trump's tariff increases on imports. Good afternoon. The Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mamoloko Kubai, has requested a comprehensive report from the National Director of Public Prosecutions on why the state failed to prove its case beyond reasonable doubt in the case of televangelist Timothy Omotoso. Omotoso and his co-accused Lusanda Sulani and Zuki Swasito were acquitted on all the charges by the Gqeberha High Court yesterday. They were facing rape, human trafficking and racketeering charges. Kubai expressed concern on the manner the case was handled by the prosecuting team, as Judge Irma Skuman lambasted the prosecution team for unethical conduct and incompetence in her judgment. Spokesperson to the minister, Terence Manasseh, says this is a setback for victims of gender-based violence and related crimes.
Minister Kubai acknowledges the statement made by the National Prosecuting Authority indicating that they will study the judgment. However, she has also, in accordance with Section 33(2)(a) of the National Prosecuting Authority Act, formally requested a comprehensive report from the National Director of Public Prosecutions to understand the factors that contributed to this outcome. Minister Kubai remains resolute in her commitment to fight against gender-based violence and femicide, and reaffirms the government's unwavering dedication to ensuring that perpetrators of GBV are held accountable.
Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Parks Dau has emphasized the importance of South Africa to entrench and deepen its global presence amid growing geopolitical tensions. The minister impressed upon delegates at the Gauteng Investment Conference the importance of leveraging on the opportunities presented by the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement and the country's G20 presidency. Dau notes that as the largest contributor to the country's GDP, the province is well placed to support a growth strategy through decarbonization, diversification and digitization.
Today as the DTIC, we are making a call for the Gauteng province to provide leadership in unlocking the opportunities provided in the FCFTA. Utilizing these economic hubs, we have repeatedly mentioned these numbers. Gauteng in particular is a leading hub and a gateway for a market of 1 billion people in Africa. This opportunity can only be fully leveraged by building internal resilience. The challenge is put to the Gauteng government to improve operational efficiency across industrial zones and simplify regulatory compliance, utilizing institutions like Invest as a one-stop shop.
The chairperson of the DA's Federal Council, Helen Zille, has filed papers in the Western Cape High Court to urgently interdict the implementation of the 0.5 percentage points VAT increase. The increase is supposed to come in effect on the 1st of May. This action by the DA follows after the 2025 budget was adopted in the National Assembly yesterday. The budget fiscal framework was adopted with recommendations made by Action SA that Treasury must be given 30 days to come up with alternatives to tax hikes while scrapping the VAT increase and to adjust personal income tax brackets. Zille explains their court action.
The first is to get the process on the 1st of April that transpired in the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Finance declared null and void because they were unprocedural. Therefore, to set aside any decision they took. And the second part of Part A is to interdict a VAT increase on the 1st of May.
The Polokwane Magistrates Court in Limpopo has heard evidence on how the daughter of a police officer accused of killing civilians for insurance claims benefited hundreds of thousands of rands from the deaths of her mother's victims. Flora Shokane is applying for bail. She was arrested with her police officer mother, Rachel Kutumela, and aunt Anna Shokane in December last year. They allegedly killed 9 destitute community members and claimed over 10 million rand in insurance. They face charges of murder, fraud and money laundering. The investigating officer, Captain Keshi Mabunda, is testifying against her bail application.
The involvement of the applicant, Your Worship, she was funding the policy through from a bank, Capitec bank account. I further want to state, Your Worship, after the payment of a funeral policy to Damaris account of 200,000, Your Worship, the applicant transferred money from Damaris account to her account to an amount of 105,000, Your Worship.
China has angrily condemned U.S. President Donald Trump's announcement of swinging tariff increases on imports from around the world. China faces an overall tariff of 54%. The BBC's Stephen McDonnell has the story.
We've had a tough response from the government in Beijing. This from the Commerce Ministry. This is a typical act of unilateral bullying. China's government has called for these measures to be overturned straight away, said that they're in breach of international trade rules and threatened their own countermeasures. And the Chinese government has been ridiculing the notion that these are reciprocal tariffs on the Trump administration's part. So, tough talk. Beijing might be hoping for some sort of a deal to be cut.
Recapping the top story this hour, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mamoloko Kubai, has requested a comprehensive report from the National Director of Public Prosecutions on why the state failed to prove its case beyond reasonable doubt in the case of televangelist Timothy Omotoso. Omotoso and his co-accused Lusanda Sulani and Zuki Swasito were acquitted on all the charges by the Gqeberha High Court yesterday. For SFM News, I'm Jolani Tulongwebe.
In sports this hour, Orlando Pirates to accelerate search for Rivero's replacement. Rain disrupts CSA 4-day series, and Rabada returns from IPL for personal reasons. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 southbound in Germiston has a crash reported at Elands Interchange. The M1 southbound is slow moving towards Boysons and Golden Highway in Diepkloof, queuing near Main Road. In KZN, the N3 eastbound has a stationary truck after Market Road exit. The N3 westbound has a stationary vehicle at Linfield Park, and the M4 northbound a crash reported at Glen Ashley. In Cape Town, the M3 southbound slow-moving towards Rhodes Drive, the M5 northbound slow-moving towards the N1 Coburg interchange, and the M7 Jakes Hartwell Drive southbound slow-moving towards the R300 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105 FM in Mokopane.
SABC Technology Business is a unit which provides services to internal and external clients. Our strategic objective is to ensure that SABC has the appropriate and reliable technological infrastructure for production, post-production, digital media content available to the public. Our range includes IP portable production studio facilities and the digitization of legacy content. Our outside broadcast vans, fully equipped to follow you anywhere and everywhere. For competitive pricing, contact Bookings Facilities at sabc.co.za.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So if yesterday was dramatic, I mean, today in many ways could be just as dramatic, isn't it? As we looked at the inside story of the budget debate and the actual vote and other reaction that we've had over the last 24 hours or so. Well, that's why the show is called The National Pulse. And by the way, just to tell you, as we get into the second year of the show, I just want to reflect on this. When I was invited back onto SAFM just about a year ago, what was important for me was the fact that I always felt I had unfinished business on the station, and the lure of hosting a show like this, a current affairs show called The National Pulse, that speaks to the nation, that gets a sense and a feel of the pulse every single weekday, was just too good to ignore. So I can tell you, as you know, that all of us are committed to signing up for another whole year. And myself and my team, which is, Temba, Keys, and Vusani, that makes up the team that works on the show every single day. We committed to delivering a winning show, a show that delivers for you every single day. And we want to do even better than we're doing right now. And ultimately, when it comes to reflecting the national pulse, we don't want to miss anything that's important. And we're quite happy with you making sure that we do just that. Hashtag the National Pulse if you wish to connect with us on social media. Right, let's get to another big issue. Picking up from yesterday, reaction on Budget 2025. Now, we know that after all that took place, the National Assembly, well, there was a vote that took place, and effectively, in simple terms, the budget was passed. But what does this really mean, and where does this leave us with regard to this all-important partnership between the ANC and the DA? With me is Mdumiseni Mtuli, who's the ANC's chief whip. Appreciate your time. As always, Mdumiseni, thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to your listeners, and thanks for having us on your program.
Thank you. Now, first things first, just clear this up. Even after the vote was cast, there were sort of mixed signals coming through, particularly from from Action SA, and I think to a large degree from Rise Mzansi as well, to say, hold it, there's a principle that's been put in place, and that's what they've agreed upon. And then we get the conflicting stories about, no, there's been now this kicking of this 0.5 percentage point increase, and that I think was also posted on the government Twitter account. But I see from an ANC perspective that had to be corrected today. So what has now been agreed?
Let me just explain the process, Ashraf. The process is that the minister presents a budget, and then the budget is referred to, the budget is presented, then the first task of Parliament is to refer the fiscal framework to the portfolio committee, which was done. The committee has got two options: either to accept what you call the fiscal framework,
and make certain recommendations where they believe as a committee certain actions have to be taken or to reject it altogether. Now, in this case, the committee exercised the former option, which is to accept and make a recommendation that in terms of the submissions they received from various sectors of society, there is a firm stance against the continuation of the 0.5% VAT. As a consequence of which they believe as a committee, which is perfectly in their own right, a process must be open for an engagement to find an alternative solution to this problem. And that was the decision. Lastly, the point that the ANC had to clarify this morning was that the earlier statement which was issued yesterday had missed one important line, that the ANC is committed to that process of the next 30 days to see to it if we can get an alternative to the current VAT proposal. So there was no new deal or new agreement or deviation. There was just an error in the statement in terms of being emphatic about the support to the process.
But that means the correction is then consistent with the line of Action SA. And I say that because I'm sure you followed all the tweets. There was a lot of dissing coming from the DA to say, look at what you guys have signed up for. You've actually agreed to a 0.5 percentage point increase. So this correction confirms what Action SA has been saying all along, that in fact all the parties have agreed to a reconsideration of the proposed 0.5% VAT increase because of the impact on lower income households. I mean, so we're consistent with that now, right?
Sure, that's perfectly correct. Okay. What had to be done was to make sure that there is a proper alignment between what we had agreed before and during the committee, as well as the statements that followed after the sitting of Parliament yesterday, and that was done.
Okay, let's then talk about, so what happens next? The DA for 1 year, just about a year, well, under a year, in fact, has been part of this unique government of national unity, and there's no question that unit, the GNU in its current form, can't really hold without the ANC and the DA being there. But as you know, the DA has actually challenged what took place last night. I mean, where does that leave you, not from a legal perspective, but certainly with that relationship?
The GNU is united, single-mindedly focused and engaged on its task. That is why it also passed a budget yesterday supported by other parties. But there is one member of the GNU who is misbehaving and conducting himself in a way that is not consistent with the principles that govern the GNU, which are contained in the Statement of Intent, and that is the Democratic Alliance. What then happens with them and their misjudgment, because clearly this was a misjudgment on their part, will depend on how they recognize the significance of their misjudgment in the context of them still being considered, not just by the ANC, but by all GNU partners as a loyal ally in the implementation of the Statement of Intent. They are remaining now with an important task, which is to answer the question, how will you be trusted ever again that you are a loyal partner, disciplined and committed to the Statement of Intent following your actions?
Well, I mean, that is the big question because, you call that misbehaving. I sort of gave the sporting analogy last night saying, think about it. The coach agrees on the game plan. One player disagrees with the game plan and then storms off the pitch. And then finally, when the game plan results in a goal being scored, reports the goal to the referee to ensure that there's a VAR ruling on that. I mean, that in sporting terms would be insurmountable. Never mind if they have a good case, meaning that player won't play for the club again.
Well, maybe the circumstances are not exactly the same, Ashraf. The fact of the matter here is that you are part of the GNU. In the GNU, firstly, you choose a very strange way of handling things. You want to talk to the ANC alone and leave behind all other GNU partners. And the message you are conveying essentially is consistent with what you have been attempting to do throughout these 8 months in the GNU, where you want to portray the GNU as nothing but an arrangement between the ANC and the DA. And the ANC has consistently challenged that notion and said to the DA, you are misunderstanding the essence and the direction of the GNU. So again, they continued with that, and that's why I'm saying it's a misjudgment, misguidance as well, and they decided to proceed in a way that so you can't exactly liken that to the scenario in the game, because here you are violating the commonly agreed positions and principles. You are not unhappy and therefore deciding to boycott after having done what you are required to do by the commitment you decided to enter into 8 months ago when the GNU was established.
Well, if you're saying that, this violation is even worse than a boycott, it gets me thinking about two things. First of all, to get clarity that, if the DA had simply agreed with the Action SA line, which is getting the ANC to commit to 30 days of negotiation around finding another way around this issue, then you'd all be in sync, right? But the story that's been doing the rounds for a good few weeks now is that the DA of all other parties had linked the issue of the VAT increase or no increase to getting concessions for other things that are fundamental to them, including like the Bella Bill and expropriation. I mean, can you confirm that that's true?
That's true. They gave us a long list of demands. They want the Bella Act to be scratched, NSI not to be funded or budgeted in this term, and they wanted their deputy minister, who's a deputy minister who happens to be a member of the DA, to be responsible for some of the major tasks that relate to the Department of Finance. There was a whole range of demands which have nothing to do with the budget, Ashraf. You can make demands about the budget. You can tell us that move that money from there to that side, do this in terms of the expenditure. We can listen to that. That's a decent conversation which is also within the context of the subject under discussion. I mean, in this case, the DA simply behaved like someone who's not familiar with the subject under discussion and wanted to use the budget to reclaim the lost ground on a number of other progressive policies adopted by this parliament, not even in the current administration, in which they lost because they were supported by the majority of the parties.
Okay, so
that is why I'm saying it's a misjudgment on their part and a failure to understand the moment we're dealing with.
Okay, so misjudgment, failure. What happens next? I mean, the two senior parties within the GNU are at this point in time on opposite sides. So what happens next?
I don't know what we mean by seniority, Ashraf. Our view as the ANC, right from the onset, GNU partners are the same. The distinction in terms of how many numbers you have does not qualify you to make you a special partner. We are all the same, but we've got different numbers. What happens now, clearly the ball is on their court, like I'm saying. They've got to answer this question convincingly, not just to you and me, but to the people of South Africa. Where has it ever happened in the world that a party in the government of national unity or in any form of coalition will stand firm, not only just to not to support the budget, but to publicly humiliate and repudiate the integrity of the partner in the government of national unity and still remain a trusted and a loyal member of that government of national unity? That's a fundamental question that the DA must not be allowed to escape, because it's a violation of the well-known and well-established principles of what it means to work within either a coalition or a government of national unity arrangement.
Okay. Point taken. Here's the last thing. In terms of the ball being in the ANC's, in the DA court, right, would you be waiting for the DA to respond, or would the ANC be making overtures to the DA to say, okay, let's talk?
The ANC, I was informed that the National Leadership of our movement is planning for a meeting of the National Executive Committee. And my understanding is that the ANC is not meeting to discuss the DA. It's meeting to discuss the implications of what happened this week, with disagreements between the DA and the ANC, but the overall impact on the GNU of what happened in Parliament, and generally what over the past few months has actually and essentially defined the public relationship between the ANC and the DA and their involvement in some of the activities that are violating our foreign policy. Okay. So once the ANC has made up its mind politically, it will communicate through its Secretary General and the President how it believes we need to proceed from where we are.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Tim Dumiseni Ntuli, the ANC Chief Whip. Fascinating, the ball in the DA's court. Do they see it like that? They may say the ball is in the ANC's court. I don't know. What's very clear is the role of Action SA. And we're going to play some sound from Athol Trollip right after this.
These are the weekend shows on SAFM. Music of Africa with Sheila Ndikumana. The Jet Set Breakfast with Michelle Constant. Seasons with Khomotso KG Moeketsi. The soundtrack of your life with Ernest Pillay. Weekend Sundowner Classics with Kutlwano Masote. Spotlight with Zai Khan. The Weekend with John Gerika. Rhythm of Africa with Shayla Ndikumana. This is SAFM. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Well, one could understand if the Action SA team had been saying, well, we told you so. We're going to be the kingmakers in this deal around at least a 30-day hold for negotiations around rethinking the VAT increase that was so troubled so many people around the budget, right? Let's get reaction. The Action SA held a media briefing earlier today to outline critical steps that the party is undertaking to protect the interests of South Africans, according to them, right? So we picked out some of the key moments from that press briefing, including this from the party leader, the caucus leader of Action SA, that's Athol Trollip, who spoke about, well, responding to the phrase, the party betrayed the people.
Those people who say we betrayed our electoral commitments are the very people who made the same electoral commitments. They're the very people who formed the multi-party charter, initiated through the Moonshot Pact. John Steenhuisen is on the record to say that we cannot work with the people who caused the same problems. Okay, but now they're working with the ANC. So isn't it ironic that only the DA can work with the ANC? That's not only ironic, it is unacceptable. We have a situation now where no party has a majority. We govern in the city of Tshwane. With the ANC, the EFF and other political parties, everyone said Tshwane would collapse. To the contrary, it's not collapsed. It's growing and starting to shine as a city under the leadership of Action SA Mayor Dr. Nasipi Moya. So there's the thing. We are prepared to work with everyone in South Africa. We are a party about fixing South Africa, not making sure that we break South Africa by bringing a deadlock to the budget so that that is increased in order to negotiate more control and leverage in the GNU. That's completely selfish. Will we work with the ANC? Last year, we had an opportunity to go into the GNU. We didn't. We chose to be the fulcrum or the pivot between a massive government of 70% and a big bloc of new opposition formed called the Progressive Caucus, which is actually a regressive caucus. So we're the biggest party in between those two. That was a strategic decision where we would locate ourselves. If the DA leave the GNU, or if they are kicked out of the GNU, we will reconsider our position, because the DA is good at opposition. Then the opposition space is suddenly disproportionately full, and the government space might be limited. So we will reevaluate, we will do that. But only once this VAT matter is sorted. We had no conditional agreements or transactional undertakings with the ANC about this.
Right, so what about the DA and the point that I made earlier in chatting to the ANC's chief whip and the legal action they want to take around the issue of what was agreed upon or voted upon last night? Well, here's Trollip once again.
On the DA's legal action, they're well within their rights to pursue legal action. We encourage them, in fact, to do that. We believe in the separation of powers. It's entirely up to them. What must be noted about the DA is that Action SA made genuine efforts to engage them on the budget. Not only were we rebuffed continuously, we were insulted, we were maligned, and we were treated, Alan Beasley was treated with such contempt by Mr. Mark Burke, who has made it an art form to be unreasonable and rude and arrogant. And he has alienated everybody in the standing committee because they simply won't engage. We have engaged with the ANC. They engaged us, in fact. I have engaged with the EFF. I wrote to the MKP. They blue-ticked us. That's fine, no problem. But we did reach out. But what is ironic, and I want you and the country to understand this, the DA spoke to nobody other than the ANC making their demands, their unreasonable demands. They overplayed their hand. They didn't engage us. Fine. They didn't engage the IFP, GNU partner. They didn't engage RISE, GNU partner. Were they serious about finding a solution to this impasse? No. I believe they are propagating this impasse at their interest. They are not putting South Africans first. Even a legal delay is going to delay this matter even further. And what's going to happen is the 1st of May, VAT is coming. So they try what they may. They can try and scapegoat everybody else for the fact that they overplayed their hand and lost. It's their problem, and they're not fixing it.
Okay, and there's more. Now, remember the issue of what was agreed upon regarding the budget was Joost Trollip explaining the position once again.
Trade, illicit trade, illegal immigrants trading and sending their money back home to their countries, black market trade, wallet transactions, financial transactions, and as Bosa said yesterday, gambling. 1.2 billion rand, a trillion rand industry, gambling, 1.2 trillion rand, and they pay 5 billion rand in tax. Sort that out, and we sort our problem out. This is precisely why Action SA has been advocating for increased SARS funding since day one, to ensure that South Africans are not forced to bear the burden of repeated tax increases. Now, on the announcement by the ANC and government at the conclusion of yesterday's events, we want to make the following quite unambiguously clear. The failure of the ANC or government communications to accurately convey its contents, evident in yesterday's statement and social media posts which materially misrepresent the facts, and the report that was voted on and passed in Parliament, does not change the report's substance or lessen the importance of the recommendations. I've spoken to the Minister, I've spoken to the Chief Whip of the ANC, and we have told them it's not up to their interpretation. It's up to their commitments, and it's up to the recommendations in that report that was passed by Parliament that they must implement. All stakeholders would do well to remember that the budgeting process still involves multiple bills that will be voted on in the coming months. Our support remains conditional on the strict fulfillment of the agreement to scrap VAT increase and income tax bracket creep through alternative proposals, which have already been outlined.
Right, so much to consider from Athol Trollip, and very clear about, I think, that point that the DA spoke to nobody but the African National Congress. It's 4:30. Here's the news headlines with Jolani Tula.
Thank you, Ashraf. Good afternoon. Making headlines, Deputy President Paul Mashatile has stressed the importance of investing in skills and education in order to unlock economic growth and job creation. Delivering a keynote address at the inaugural Gauteng Investment Conference, Mashatile emphasized that investing in Gauteng is not just about financial returns, but investing in the people, the communities, and the country's future. The Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mamoloko Kubai, has requested a comprehensive report from the National Director of Public Prosecutions on why the state failed to prove its case beyond reasonable doubt in the case of televangelist Timothy Omotoso. And finally, there's some puzzlement in Australia as to why US President Donald Trump's tariffs specifically targeted a group of tiny remote islands controlled by Canberra. None has significant economic output. For SAFM News, I'm Jolani Tulongwebe.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 southbound in Midrand has a crash before New Road. The N1 southbound in Fourways queuing towards Winnie Mandela Drive. Christian de Wet Road southbound in Strubens Valley has a crash before Hendrik Potgieter Road. And Eskom Bahleli Drive northbound in Pretoria has delays towards Moot Street. In KZN, on the N3 westbound, a stationary vehicle at Spaghetti Junction and an accident reported on Linwood Road after Porsche causing traffic to be backed up. In the Free State, on the N3 northbound, a truck crash south of Warden, traffic moving via contraflow on the southbound carriageway. You're asked to expect heavy delays. In the northwest, on the N12, flooding reported at Stilfontein. In Cape Town, the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound queuing towards Hospital Bend. The N1 inbound is queuing on the elevated freeway, and Commercial Street is closed towards Plain Street in the CBD. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
So to me, I've been working on my lines, and I came up with the best one, and it's called "Au revoir, Rivero." I think that's okay.
That is point on. Yes, we are talking all things Orlando Pirates, and Chairman Ivan Khoza says that the club is set to work around the clock to find a suitable new head coach after Jose Rivero opted not to renew his contract. The Buccaneers have confirmed that Rivero will step down from his position at the end of this current campaign. The Spaniard decided not to renew his contract with the club, which is due to expire at the end of the season due to personal reasons. Obviously, this comes as a major blow to the club, with the Spaniard who joined the club with mixed results, winning 5 domestic titles since his arrival, and remains in contest for the league, Nedbank Cup and CAF Champions League for the remainder of the stage. So the big question is, who will be the new coach? We are yet to see. Ashraf, you were saying that Gavin Hunt is looking for a job. I don't see.
But they're in hunt for a coach, so why wouldn't they look at Hunt?
I honestly don't see Pirates going local. I don't.
You don't think so?
No.
They got too much pride.
No.
I'm just asking.
I'm not saying. However, there is also Coach Pito Musimani, but hey, I don't see them going local. We are yet to see who's going to come.
But why not Pito? I mean, he's done with his, UAE, Egypt trips, isn't he?
He is.
He's a winner. He is.
He is. Listen, I just feel like, for me personally, a club like Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs, for that matter, they're very complex clubs to coach, and there's specific coaches that are needed for those clubs. So yeah.
So what type of specific coach is required for a complex club? Certainly not a guy like Jose Mourinho, who sort of tries to pin somebody's nose and the guy falls down. I mean, what type of coach do they want?
I don't listen. I can't even put words to it. All I know is that I do not see Orlando Pirates going local.
Okay.
But we are yet to see how things are going to unfold. And then still staying with football, Amajimbos are in action against Cameroon in the Under-17 Africa Cup of Nations. The match is 34 minutes in, and it remains goalless. In the meantime, Bafana have climbed one spot to 56th in the latest FIFA World Rankings published today. South Africa picked up 2 crucial wins in the latest 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers, beating Lesotho and Benin. They're currently on an 18-match unbeaten run and have won 6 out of the last 7 games under Hugo Broos. Now, Bafana also secured a place in the top 10 in Africa, with Morocco the highest-ranked African nation in 12th overall. In cricket, fast bowler Kagiso Rabada has left the Gujarat Titans squad and returned home to South Africa for personal reasons. In a statement, the franchise says that he left to deal with an important personal matter and did not specify a date for his return. Rabada played GT's first 2 matches in IPL 2025, taking 1 for 41 in the defeat to Punjab Kings and 1 for 42 in the victory against Mumbai Indian. Meanwhile, rain disrupted the first day of the CSA 4-day series match between the Knights and the Lions at the Mangaung Oval. This is the second week in a row that the Lions find themselves in a situation where they lose at least a day's worth of play. Last week, they lost 2 days of play in their clash against the Dolphins at the DP World Wanderers. And Knights have won 1, drew 2, and lost 2 games, while the Lions have 1 foot in the final and will guarantee themselves a home final. This is if they beat the Knights. In athletic news, Michael Johnson's Grand Slam track series gets underway in Kingston tomorrow. Johnson believes that the 4-event circuit represents a landmark moment for track and field, a bold new attempt to rejuvenate interest in the sport after years of decline. Now, in terms of the athletes and who will compete and how they're chosen, they're based on the top 10 rankings, global following, on if there are global champions and medalists, and also existing rivalries. And then in tennis, American Emma Navarro says that she put her name to a letter signed by the world's top tennis players, calling for significant improvements in prize money at the 4 Grand Slams as a way to ensure players receive equal treatment. The top 20 ATP and WTA players have reportedly sent the letter to the Australian Open, French Open, Wimbledon, and the US Open recently, demanding a more equitable distribution of revenues. And finally, in motorsport, Max Verstappen has admitted that he was unhappy with Red Bull's ruthless driver swap for the Japanese Grand Prix, saying that his endorsement of social media posts criticizing the move speaks for itself. Now, the four-time world champion has a new teammate in the name of Yuki Tsunoda, who replaced underperforming Liam Lawson 2 weeks into the Formula One season. Red Bull has been criticized for not giving Lawson enough time, with the former F1 driver Giancarlo van der Garde saying on social media that the move was bullying and a panic move. With that said, it is a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour.
Okay, and you can work on your names in terms of give me the best possible overseas coach who may come to South Africa. You may not know because I don't know, but I mean you can think about it. In fact, we'll leave it to the audience. I'm sure you have a better idea of who Pirates should pick as their next coach, since it's au revoir, Jose, Rivero. Yeah, more sport in an hour.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And let's get to those numbers with Makwe Masilena, the Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, you got news locally and globally.
Yes, Ashraf, afternoon to you and to the listeners. Ashraf, as expected, the global markets are experiencing a sweeping sell-off, and that's after Trump slapped the tariffs on all exporters to the U.S., with rates ranging from 10% to 50%. And Ashraf, that's from friends to enemies. The U.S. president showed little mercy, and we should definitely expect some retaliation. And the rand continued to be under pressure from mixed developments in relation to the national budget. Also, falling commodity prices exacerbated the situation. This is happening on the day, Ashraf, the U.S. is at 6-month low, meaning the local currency should ordinarily be getting a boost, but later the rand managed to recover some of the lost ground, and market participants will be forgiven for throwing most forecasts out of the window if this tariff rate stays on for an extended period of time. And Trump justified the tariffs by citing unfair trade policies and currency manipulation, asserting that this measures will rejuvenate American industries and reduce national debt, forgetting that weaker trade, higher input costs, and shrinking margins are bad for economies. Oil prices under heavy pressure as decision by OPEC Plus to speed up its unwinding of output cuts in May compounded already heavy losses following Trump's new tariff announcement. And we see Brent crude is down 4.5% at $70 a barrel, with Sasol nose diving almost 11%. Yellow metal took a breather after surging to yet another all-time high following the tariff announcements, which drove investors to safe haven asset. Now is down 0.4% at 3,115, and platinum is down 3%. Ashraf, we all know that stock valuations have been at elevated levels and most priced for perfection. Hence this uncontrollable market reaction. The JSE wiped out almost 1 trillion of its market value as it fell 3.5%, and financials continue to be the main culprit, and the rand managed to firm 0.6% against the dollar. It's now 18.74, 24.73 against the pound, and 20.84 against the euro.
Thanks for that, Makwe. We'll connect again with you tomorrow.
Stay on top of all meaningful, top trending stories right here on SAFM. Leading the conversation. You're listening to the National Pulse.
I will take your calls. I'll take your calls shortly, and that means, if you can call, let me give you that number, 086-000-2032. And I'm trying to guess what is it that you're going to talk about. Of course, what you should talk about, as I would do if I were you, is like talk about the issues that moves the pulse today. What's sort of picking your brains and evoking an emotional response for you that wants you to call in, whether you're a regular or a first-time caller, first-time listener. Either way, you can also WhatsApp us to 0614-104-107, and that's text or voice notes. And don't forget, you can also tweet us, SFM Radio. When you tag us and then tag me, Ashraf Garda, do use the hashtag The National Pulse. Right, let's move on to another issue that has certainly caused huge, trauma, I would think, for many, many people, and that's justice for Claire. Now, linked to that, you may be aware of the Eastern Cape's decision at one stage to deregister an independent school in Matatiele, which the 7-year-old pupil was allegedly raped in October. Now, we understand there's been an about turn around that decision, that is. Let's get the thoughts then of Vuyiseke Imboqela, who's the spokesperson for the Education MEC in the Eastern Cape. Appreciate your time, Vuyiseka. Thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and good afternoon to the listeners of SAFM.
All right, so let's understand this. I mean, what's happened around the rape of a 7-year-old girl linked to school is just horrific. Okay, let that take its course on the one hand. On the other hand, why the decision, firstly, to actually deregister a school? And then we'll talk about why that was overturned.
Okay, thank you very much, Ashraf. I think let me give this without getting into issues that they are still sub judice, as the matter now is being handled by the South African Police Service at a national level. Sometime last year, around about October, an incident of rape allegations surfaced against a school, and the processes of government took place, wherein some reports came out, and also investigation was taking place. What then became an issue was when a person that is said to the school principal of this independent school was not cooperating with the South African Police Service as they claimed, and this person was also a school principal. Upon interacting with the matter as the department, we produced our own report, and we then this year felt it is important that as government, which is bestowed with a responsibility to host the kids that are learners in our school, that we must use one of the available prescripts in trying to make sure that we contribute in the trying to solve the situation. And the only thing that was before us and possible was for us to file for the temporary deregistration of the school, and also the reversal of the funding that we give them. And upon us having done that, they then rushed to court and also cooperated with the investigation as the descendant of South African Police Service started kicking in the province. And then therefore, when that happened, we felt it is important and it's only fair for those 600 learners that are in that school that they go back to school. And then we took a decision as a department then to reverse the decision that we took earlier on of taking off their own accreditation as an independent school in the province.
Now, when were they going to be, when the school was deregistered, what was going to happen to those learners? Where were they going to go to? Which schools?
Had that process happened to the latter, we were going to have a responsibility as a department then to take learners to different schools in Matatiele, and also maybe others to Kokstad. But because the process couldn't even reach the court process of them having to ventilate in court, because we then saw that they are cooperating with the investigation, and also the South African Police Service national is in the matter, then we then reversed the decision.
Okay, so now they're in reversing it, right? What then happens to the learners? Give me the status of the school in terms of where it was a few months ago to where it is now, and how quickly it can get on board to actually getting on with the business of teaching.
No. The status of the school is as it was before, because now that decision, we couldn't finalize it because we gave them 24 hours as an intention that if you don't cooperate, then we will take off your license. Then in that very same period, they then participated in what is designed as a way of investigating the matter by the South African Police Service. Then we took off our decision. In terms of learners having to go back to classes, teachers being there, their administration will continue as they have planned, and the teaching will continue when they open the second term. Because anyway, deregistration didn't necessarily mean they were just going to vanish in the thin air. It just meant that their accreditation, which is the one that compels them to say they're a school, was to be taken away, of which is something then that we said we are reversing it on the basis that they are cooperating with the investigation that is taking place currently, led by the South African Police Service.
All right. What is the mood of this, the school community and the community around the school?
It's a mixed feeling, Ashraf, because one, you're talking about the parents that want to see justice done for the violated girl, little girl, and also you also talk about the parents that themselves are directly involved in the matter because they've got kids that are studying in that college, which they want to see their kids back to school when the school is opening. And I can tell you that they are going to do that. It's going to happen. Their school is going to be opened. And at the very same time, just generally in the province, you've got a well-spoken issue of the evangelist, which now is also adding either a pain or a point of discussion in terms of just generally issues of rape in the province and issues of rape in the country and how certain issues are handled. So it's a mixed feeling when it comes to the department, and also it's a huge debate just generally in the country in relation to how the country and also maybe us as a society view issues of rape and how we behave as it and when they surface.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
I think more importantly, what I would wish to add, Ashraf, is that people must trust the process that is being undertaken by government, and they must know that there is no way that provincial government of the Eastern Cape and also the Department of Education can do anything to jeopardize the future of our own kids. It's not in the best interest of us, but as it and when we have to do justice, there are some technical decisions that we must take.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Thank you for your time. Vuyiseka Mboxela, the spokesperson for the Education MEC in the Eastern Cape. But it means it's time now for me to take your calls because I want to get a sense of your pulse. And do you have a finger on your pulse as I try and connect with you and understand what is it that you want to get your chest off?
Switch to Stream with SABC Plus. No subscription fees. Stream anywhere, anytime. Zero subscription fees. Download SABC Plus on Android or iOS and watch the Betway Premier Soccer League, the English Premier League, and the Bundesliga live. You can also catch up with Uzalo, Skim Sam, Generations on demand and listen to your favorite radio stations live. Ukhozi, Umhlobo Wenene, Radio 2000 and 5FM, all for free. Switch to Stream with SABC Plus now. No subscription fees. Stream anywhere, anytime with SABC Plus.
If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation.
Okay, let's get to your opinions. We start in the Western Cape with Hendrik. In fact, we'll get to that in just a moment. Make a note of this, okay? SASSA's Gold Card beneficiaries can still come and collect their new Postbank Black Card. Now, avoid the risk of not receiving your grant. Join over 1.3 million beneficiaries that are already conveniently receiving their grant using, well, the Postbank Black Card. There are multiple selected outlets nationwide where you can swap your SASSA Gold Card for the new Postbank Black Card. What do you need to do? Dial *120 *355# to find one near you. Standard rates apply. Postbank, your bank.
Do great solutions start with good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
All right, let's get to some of your thoughts, and it's quite amazing how many people have spoken about and want to talk about the Omotoso issue, because I think it's got huge ramifications, doesn't it?
Ashraf, this is Mzwandile in Kabeja. So with regards to Omotoso, this thing, it highlights one thing that South African government is exposed, that it has been failing to attend to, which have been crying about, as citizens. It's not even about the GBC, it's about the illegal foreigners that come in and go and do as they please in our country, Ashraf. You see, this is the failure of one of such things. At least now they are not going to be able to appeal this judgment and make our Omotoso to go in jail. At least what they can do is to deport this man to leave our country. And they must do with the rest with other foreigners that are illegal in this country.
But I mean, you can't link other foreigners to this person. I mean, quite honestly, each one's judged very much on their own, right? Right, Donald Trump?
Good afternoon, Mr. Ashraf. Is the trucker here in Free State heading to Western Cape. That Ashraf, the sooner our government realize that Trump is like somebody who's having a sugar rush, is like a child. He's jumping all over the place, him and Musk doing all these kinds of shenanigans. Just put on hold this relationship. Go elsewhere. Go to China. Even though Chinese are busy with their knockoff, let's work with them. Let's work with the Chinese. They've got original stuff, the Chinese. Let's work with the Chinese for the moment, please. And those who want to work with us.
Let's work with the Chinese. But you see, genuinely, is it an either or? I think that's also naive. And I don't think the South Africa's government's taken up that position.
Yes, good afternoon, Ashraf. Man, I'm happy that the judge was a white person and was also a female. Let me say, I'm glad it was a female, because if it was a man, everyone will come at him. Now it's a female. Now there's not much issue about her. Anyway, I'm not disappointed with the outcomes due to the process the case took. It's anonymous. Tango.
Okay, that's another. Let's get another one. And I just wonder, anybody wants to talk about Orlando Pirates and the changes there? Just thinking.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Ashraf, judges and magistrates, they pass their judgments and sentences depending on how they apply their minds, depending on the facts of the prosecutors and the facts on the table. But now, if we are now crying for a judge who has passed this judgment depending with the facts on his table, and now we want to change the narrative for judgments to be passed depending on the social media outcry and the profile of a person who is being judged, then I think we are creating a problem. That's my take. Thanks, James in Johannesburg.
Tell you what, we certainly are creating a problem. We already have a problem, isn't it? Let's get further comment. Hendrik in the Western Cape. Go for it, Hendrik.
Azra, thank you for the opportunity. I just want to, my point is, man, what is happening in the Western Cape, and especially with the ANC? Historically, I vote for the ANC, but nowadays, maybe I'm the man for Frederick Adams of the NCC party. He's the only one exposing the corruption going on in the DA in the Western Cape. You see, that 5 billion for that lines, that fiber lines. And that other story of the millions, maybe the billions they give away to National Treasury for not building houses. They don't care about the poor. And now they want to make an issue of the 0.5% in the VAT. They don't put South Africa first. We must get the DA out of our country. It's a pity that the PA's Gaten McKenzie also run now with that, I'm never going to say the fool, that of AfriForum Kali. That one, going to the USA, make us bad. And also running with that extreme Herzog guy of the right. It's a pity. And also Gaten run with Israel and whatever. It's a pity. And now maybe the next time, the person coming to me for vote, it seems to me the National Colored Party of Frederick Adams. Thank you very much. He's exposing the ANC in the Western Cape is doing nothing to inform their people what is going on. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks for that. Certainly, Hendrik wants to get a lot off his chest. By the way, you mentioned Fadil Adams, I think it is, right? By the way, the Gaten McKenzie's party did pretty well in the Joburg by-elections last night. So I think, right, more thoughts, Butchana and Rosebank, go for it.
Good afternoon, my brother. The Timothy Omotoso case is a perfect example
of the crisis of service delivery from the NPA. They look like they are dysfunctional. And this case is not isolated. Remember the soccer player. The case now is running for more than a decade. Can you remember the case of Palapala? They just walk away from it. It is so frustrating. And these are deployees. Deployees have been sent there, but they looks like they don't know what they are doing. It's a crisis then. That needs to be resolved. It is painful to see a person being charged with more than 30 charges, walking away free.
Well, I mean, that is why there is so much anger, because and I think it's right, it's a complete reflection of service no delivery, because, I mean, service has been compromised there. That's what it is. Putana, thank you for once again punctuating the importance of that issue. Right, more thoughts? And again, there's so many people who has an opinion about Omotoso's issue.
There's no point in ANC ministers expressing shock at this horrible outcome from Makanda High Court. The ANC has been behind the destruction and the stripping apart of the NPA, and now victims of GBV are paying a heavy price. No point in them pretending to be shocked. I mean, they have no right to be shocked. They've destroyed that thing, the NPA. Thanks, Ashraf Thabo Petrant.
They have no right to believe. I mean, the word shocked, is the preserve of certain individuals, political individuals who are shocked at things happening. Okay?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Ashraf. This is Paul here from Teneton. Ashraf, with this case of Omotoso, I will tell you, this thing, it has been happening all along. The prosecutors, in each and every court, they sell dogged or they take bribes. This case is all about the prosecutor. No, it's not about the prosecutors being mediocre, but it's about being bribed. We know.
You think it's about that, just simply being bribed, so they were bribed, as opposed to just being incompetent? Is that, well, of course there's a difference. I don't know. We've got no evidence for that, do we? Should we trust the process or not? Right, here's another one that I just want to pick up on, and it's not about Omotoso.
Ashraf Butikotlo from Taung Enlekale Machonisa. I think that this is the end of the GNU. Anytime from now, we will hear that pronouncement from the Democratic Alliance that the journey of GNU has come to an end in the DA. And if that will be the case, then it means that we soon will be going for snap elections.
Is this the end of not the DA, the GNU? Lots of people think so. I don't know. We'll have to see. By the way, just talking about that, we'll chat to Professor Stephen Friedman about just that. Of course, I'll ask him about that. So listen out for that, which comes up just on the other side of 5 o'clock. Right now, it's time for the news with Greg Hose.
Thank you, Ashraf. Mashatile speaks on the importance of education in Australia, puzzled over some US tariffs. Good day to you. The Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, stressed the importance of investing in skills and education in order to unlock economic growth and job creation. He was delivering the keynote address at the Gauteng Investment Conference in Johannesburg.
Infrastructure is sometimes referred to as the wheel of economic activity, since it creates an environment conducive to productive activities that promotes development. Moreover, the province should invest in education and skills development programs to ensure that the workforce is equipped to meet the demands of the growing economy. The highly sought-after skills include digital literacy, data analysis, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and renewable energy technologies.
The Minister of Justice, Mamoloko Kubai, has requested a comprehensive report from the National Director of Public Prosecutions on why the state failed to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt in the case of Pastor Timothy Omotoso. Omotoso and his two co-accused were acquitted on all charges by the High Court in Eastern Cape yesterday. They were facing rape, human trafficking and racketeering charges. The ministers expressed concern about the manner the case was handled by the prosecuting team. The minister's spokesperson is Terence Manasseh.
Minister Kubai acknowledges the statement made by the National Prosecuting Authority indicating that they will study the judgment. However, she has also, in accordance with Section 33, 2A of the National Prosecuting Authority Act, formally requested a comprehensive report from the National Director of Public Prosecutions to understand the factors that contributed to this outcome. Minister Kubai remains resolute in her commitment to fight against gender-based violence and femicide and reaffirms the government's unwavering dedication to ensuring that perpetrators of GBV are held accountable.
The chairperson of the DA's Federal Council, Helen Ziller, says the party's continuation in the GNU will be considered at a meeting today. She addressed the media after she filed an application for an urgent interdict against the implementation of the 0.5 percentage point increase in VAT at the Western Cape High Court.
We know that whatever decision we take will have profound implications for South Africa and for our economy, so we're not rushing into anything. We are going to consider all the options, look at all the consequences and try to predict the unintended consequences and then make a rational decision on the basis of those at the right time.
Another police officer to give witness testimony in the Jocelyn Smith trial has testified that accused number 2, Stefano van Ryn, gave his confession willingly. Colonel Edward Clark took the confession from van Ryn. A video showing that an initial so-called confession of van Ryn has been played in the Western Cape High Court, sitting at Saldanha. Van Ryn and his co-accused claim police tortured them into making confessions with regards to the disappearance of Jocelyn. In the video, Colonel Clark asks van Ryn how he sustained his injuries. Counsel for van Ryn says her client didn't understand the line of questioning. This is what Clark had to say in reply.
A standard 5 drop-out people could understand what a justice of peace is.
I specifically, if you recall, going back to the video, my lord, said one of two things. I've got the same powers than a magistrate. Secondly, I told him, have you been in court procedures before? And he said, yes, he knows how it works. So I believe that he understood it, my lord.
Former Bavenda King Prince Tony Mpepu Ramabulana has testified that the interim committee of the Mpepu royal family appointed him as chief, not as acting chief, in 1998. He was being cross-examined by Prince Masindi Mpepu's lawyer, Alan Dotson, at the Polokwane High Court in Limpopo. The Bavenda throne became vacant after Prince Masindi successfully challenged her uncle, Prince Tony Mpepu Ramabulana, in the Con-Court. Advocate Dotson questioned Prince Mpepu.
Interim committee, or rather the committee that was led by Charles Mpepu, did not appoint me or identify me as an acting chief. They appointed me as chief.
2 weeks after Dimbayika's death, they appointed you as acting.
I don't know about that.
And the reason for that was that at that stage they recognized Masindi's entitlement to take the throne.
I did not see any paper mentioning such a thing.
Finally, there's puzzlement in Australia as to why US President Donald Trump's tariffs have targeted a group of tiny, remote islands controlled by Australia. The BBC's Mickey Bristow has more.
The volcanic Heard MacDonald Islands are 4,000 kilometres and 2 weeks sailing from Australia. They're home to penguins and seals, but no humans. Nevertheless, they're on a list of territories to be hit by US tariffs, 10%. The Australian territory of Norfolk Island will have to endure a duty of 29%, even though its leaders say it has no exports to America. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said it showed that nowhere on earth was exempt from US tariffs.
The top story, the Deputy President stressed the importance of investing in skills and education in order to unlock economic growth and job creation. That's SAFM News, I'm Greg Goss.
In sports this hour, PSL confirmed Nedbank Cup semi-final dates. Rabada returns from IPL for personal reasons, and Lawson vows to prove he belongs in F1 after shock axing. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound has heavy traffic towards Southgate, Golden Highway in Diepkloof, queuing near Main Road, and Eskampa-Hleli Drive northbound in Pretoria has delays towards Moot Street. In KZN, the N2 southbound has a crash after Umgeni Road, the N3 westbound queuing towards the Pavilion Shopping Centre exit, and the N3 southbound in Howick has a truck crash reported at Balgowan. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound has a stationary vehicle near the N7 highway. Main Road westbound in Greenpoint is slow moving towards York Road, and the R304 northbound in Stellenbosch queuing towards the Port Lorraine Road junction. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 106.6 FM in Mangaung. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Okay, let me tell you, by the way, we'll get further reaction regarding the comments of the minister, the Justice Minister, wanting answers on the Amatosho acquittal and the whole process around it. That comes up around 5:20, so listen out for that, right? But in the meantime, let's get to understanding what has happened really in the last 24 hours. We are talking about the different political parties, and central to that is the budget accepted or not, and the fallout. You've heard Helen Zille say they were having a meeting tonight, in fact, with a view to considering whether they could stay within the GNU or not. So let's try and get a perspective from Professor Stephen Friedman, who's a political analyst from the University of Joburg. Prof. Friedman, appreciate your time. Thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
Thank you, Ashraf.
Thank you. How would you best describe the events of the last 24 hours or so?
Well, I think, Ashraf, what's happened is that the ANC has tried to deal with the budget deadlock by creating a new majority in Parliament. So that means cobbling together a majority of very small parties together with Action SA, who haven't been part of the coalition. And that's worked to pass the budget. But I don't see how it could work to govern the country. So it seems to me to be a rather short-sighted strategy. The DA's strategy, I think, is equally short-sighted. They campaigned last year arguing that they were needed in government to prevent what they called a doomsday coalition of the ANC and EFF or MK party. Are they now going to tell their voters that they're leaving all that because they don't like a 0.5% VAT increase? It seems to me that, the politicians are not making very smart calculations. And all this, I think, is really a price we're paying for the fact that our Constitution doesn't have a proper way of dealing with a situation in which no party has a majority. The Constitution says that we've got to elect a president within 2 weeks of an election. And what happened last year is that you had two parties who've been fighting against each other for years, who suddenly in 10 days had to make some sort of deal. And we're now seeing how much of a problem that was. I always make the point that Germany has governed by coalitions for 80 years now. Yeah. In Germany, it takes about 5 months for the parties to negotiate a coalition. We've never had a national coalition before, and they were expected to negotiate it in 2 weeks.
So would you say that the root of the problem? Yeah. So would you say the root of the problem in terms of what we're facing now is that the pressure to come up with a solution in 2 weeks, so a forced solution really is what it was?
Yeah, they didn't really, it's becoming quite obvious. They didn't sort out, how to deal with their differences. So that we've had, even before this budget drama, we've had situations in which ministers and deputy ministers can't agree on whether to table a bill, can't agree on whether they're going to implement a bill. Obviously there are differences between them, but you're supposed to sort those out somehow. They always knew there were differences between them, and they seem to have done nothing over the last 9 months
to
actually give them a way of sorting out those differences, so that they don't have to fight with each other in public for it.
So now, I mean, without delving on the budget with you, we'd rather speak about the political parties. So I mean, the ANC be very clear in the conversations I've had with them today, and you've probably heard it on other platforms too, that there's no way, on the one hand, they can deal with a party, a partner in this case here, that they did not support the budget vote. On the one hand, on the other hand, you have the DA that's actually taken the issue to interdict the issue of the budget, but also now confirming they will be having a conversation about it tonight, right? How realistic is that, considering your initial point that the ANC understood they had to partner with the DA to stay in power the way they wanted, and the DA, to prevent their doomsday scenario, had to remain partners with the ANC. So how realistic is it that the DA would actually withdraw from the GNU when they weigh up all different things tonight?
Well, look, I've got myself into trouble over the last few days by assuming that politicians take reasonable decisions, so I'm not prepared to predict what they're actually going to do. But, how reasonable is it? How workable is it? It isn't reasonable or workable at all. So the ANC says, well, it's not prepared to govern with any party which rejects the budget. That means that the only way it can govern, because remember, MK rejected the budget, the EFF rejected the budget. The only way the ANC could govern is by stringing together a coalition for the next 3.5 years of a whole lot of small parties. We've seen how unstable that is in local government, because the very small parties can now go to the big party and say, if you don't give us exactly what we want, we're walking out of the coalition. And it strikes me as particularly ridiculous, sorry to be that frank. Here we are the day after they managed to just get a budget through. And nobody in what would have to be the coalition seems to be able to agree on what they actually decided in the committee.
Yeah.
The ANC is issuing statements suggesting that there's no problem with the VAT increase. Action SA and other parties are saying, there's a big problem with the VAT increase. So, we're being asked to believe that parties who can't even agree on what was said in a committee meeting are going to somehow govern for the next 3.5 years.
Interesting you say that, because the ANC then had to correct
DA's position.
Yeah.
So,
no, I was saying, Stephen, ANC had to then correct that position of the confirmed 0.5 percentage point increase after the Action SA said that was not what we agreed upon. And as you're probably aware of, many parties like the DA sort of teased and mocked Action SA last night. So there's been a correction to the ANC that the DA position is correct, but the Action SA position is correct. But Action SA even today then said, if they don't get to a situation, if they would finally, after consultation, go the route of a 0.5% increase, they would not support that either. So we could still have that problem coming up in a few weeks' time, and that's to your point of just unworkable upon unworkable, isn't it?
Well, it is, because my point is, without going into the details of the budget, some people seem to be under the impression that the budget was passed yesterday. The budget was not passed yesterday. A particular section of the budget was passed yesterday. The whole budget still has to be voted on. So if they can't agree within 30 days on what to do about that, then there's a very strong chance that the budget will be defeated in Parliament. So, this new reality that we're supposed to believe is possible, I don't know whether they'll be able to get a budget through, let alone govern. And yes, you're correct, of course, they have corrected it. But, if you need to issue public corrections about stuff you've agreed to with your so-called partners, that really doesn't bode well. And the DA, I think, really needs to have a look at, what it has done to contribute to the situation. Because, what seems to have happened is that the DA saw this as an opportunity, to make all sorts of demands which they must have known were not going to be possible. To change legislation, which clearly they and the ANC disagreed on, which was not passed during the life of this coalition. So they totally overestimated their own power. And look, at the moment it looks unlikely, and will probably remain unlikely for a while, that the ANC goes into coalition with the EFF or MK. But if the DA walks out, that becomes something which will be possible, for the next 3.5 years. So they could face a situation where what they told their voters would be the doomsday coalition becomes a reality because there's the 5% VAT increase. So they're not, neither side is really thinking this through very carefully. Whatever your politics, whichever side you happen to be on, the only government which has a chance of governing in a stable fashion for the next 3.5 years is a coalition between the ANC and the DA.
Okay. And therefore, maybe just the last thing, and I know we are speculating, so we just have two scenarios. Well, one is the current status quo between the ANC and the DA sticking together because they just know it's best for their own interest as well, right? But just very quickly, the two scenarios, I mean, the EFF, let me get this right, the DA pulling out to the GNU tonight, how do you think that would play out? And I accept the fact, even as you speculate, we don't know because things change every single day. But how would we then see a reconfiguration of the parties?
Well, that's precisely what I'm asking about, because, people quote the ANC, people say, oh, we're not going to govern with a party which rejects the budget. But nobody then asks them the next obvious question, which is, do you know that if you do that, if you take that attitude, you're going to battle to put together any government at all. I've been doing the maths for the last day or so. If the Freedom Front Plus stays in the coalition, then they can just scrape the majority, but then they're going to be held to ransom by the small parties for the next 3.5 years, or for as long as it takes for one of the small parties to walk out and collapse the coalition. If the Freedom Front Plus, because remember they voted against the budget, so we're supposed to not have parties in the government which they voted against the resolution yesterday, which opposed that resolution, then they've got to get actually SA into the government, they've got to get Boss into the government, and they have a majority. Anybody who thinks that that's going to work for 3.5 years really is not paying attention.
Okay. And I'll tell you what, to sum up all the things you've just said, Helen Zille has been quoted as saying, if Ramaphosa fires the DA ministers, the government will collapse. Don't answer that because that's exactly the conundrum they all face. Appreciate your time. Yeah. There we are. Stephen Friedman, Professor Stephen Friedman. Appreciate your time. It is just that. Why would you say that? Because that would suggest that you want those ministers to stick around. And the threat of getting them fired is like, you'll collapse the government if you do just that. It could be in for an interesting next few hours. As I said, the same thing yesterday. This is the National Pulse.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, we touched on this earlier on, and that regards the biggest issue that we've had besides the budget, which is the issue of Timothy Amathoso and his acquittal. And you know that earlier on, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mameloko Kubayi, not happy at all about the circumstances around his acquittal, and making a point about suggesting that they're to report the issue to the NPA and then to Advocate Shamina Batoy as well to understand just where are these shortcomings. That is, effectively, it has compromised the justice system in our country, right? Let's get another reaction on this from Terence Manasseh, who was the spokesperson for the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development. Terence, appreciate you connecting on the National Pulse. Terence, hi.
Good afternoon to your listeners. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I certainly can. Thanks for your time. Terence. Right, now you do know that your principal, the minister, really, really unhappy with the turn of events around the acquittal of Amatosho. But, many people calling in, it's like, why would, an ANC MP be shocked? I mean, these are the type of shortcomings we've had in so many sectors of South African society.
Well, the minister presides over the justice portfolio, and when matters like this in her portfolio, when challenges like this come up, she really has to be concerned. It is in this regard that she has written to the National Director of Public Prosecutions to understand exactly what is happening, what are the factors that contributed to the outcome of the Amatosho case. The reason for her doing this, Ashraf, is to try and find out where the challenges are. I mean, the judge was scathing, and the criticism, this is what the minister is saying, the criticism to the NDP on the quality of their cross-examination was really concerning. And that it is in this regard that the minister is trying to find out what the challenges are, because these challenges that the judge raised are inward-looking, and she wants to find out what is the challenge so that we can come up with solutions.
Okay, so what can you tell us? I mean, I understand you're going to have to find out more, but I mean, this puts a huge blight on, the entire judiciary, because, I mean, the question marks are being asked across the board, isn't it? Considering this issue went on for 8 years, and some of the comments from the judge herself effectively questions just about everything around what we do. Now, why I'm saying that is that this doesn't augur well for the confidence that people have, even when people who are criminal are actually arrested.
Yeah, well, Ashraf, I wouldn't say across the board at this stage. We are fairly new in the portfolio. We're still studying the entire justice portfolio, and we have not really got into a space where we can say across the board. But in this case, the NDP, what the judge was criticizing us on was really concerning, to a point that the minister has invoked this Section 33A. 33(2)A of the National Prosecuting Authority to find out exactly what is happening, with the view of finding solutions and changing this space in the justice portfolio for the better.
All right. What about the broader issue, and certainly this falls within your department, of engendering a sense of confidence that the public should have in the justice system? Because, I mean, that is so critical, isn't it?
It is critical, Ashraf. That is why the minister wants to come up with solutions, especially, maybe let me give you another context to this matter, that this one touches more on our efforts to fight gender-based violence. And this is something that the minister is really passionate about, to make sure that we end gender-based violence. And she's saying challenges like these in the prosecuting authority puts a damper on these efforts to end gender-based violence. That is why we are really concerned when we are trying to make inroads in making sure that we end gender-based violence and femicide. So earlier on, she was talking to a journalist on the very same matter. She's saying, people who are in this space, this somber space of gender-based violence, it takes guards for them to come out and testify, subjecting themselves to public scrutiny. And then when things like this happen, they discouraged others to come out in the future, which puts a challenge to our efforts to ending gender-based violence in the country.
Yeah. Just the last point. I mean, the point about, the confidence of the public. I mean, and I know it's early days with this investigation, right? But how then?
Yes,
I would think there would have to be a rollout in terms of communicating nationwide about the workings of the justice system, so that the public can then engender a sense of confidence. I mean, do you agree with me?
I do agree with you, Ashraf. Two things. When we get to the root cause of this challenge and coming up with solutions, we will communicate them, and this will certainly boost the confidence in the justice system. And there is something that I was working on. I'm hoping to publicize it the soonest. I wanted to table the achievements that the minister has achieved in the past 100 days in her office. She has really done remarkably well. And once we communicate these achievements of the minister, this will definitely boost the confidence in the justice system. The public will really have confidence in the justice system. They will see that we are in a positive trajectory to try and turn around where there are challenges. Remember, I indicated earlier on that I would not say the challenges are broad. There are pockets of challenges here and there, and the minister is well on her way, positive trajectory to try and change those areas that have challenges.
Okay, that's where we leave it. Appreciate your time, Terence Manasseh, the spokesperson for the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development. I mean, and that gets me putting this question to you. Besides the actual issue in the case around Omotoso, I think you'd be asking the same questions, and I'd be asking you too, which is, what do you need to be hearing from the ministry and the entire justice system, and I'm talking about the NPA and everybody else in the next few weeks, that will engender a sense of confidence for you? Because if you don't hear that, then it doesn't really matter who gets arrested. I'm talking about particularly the high-profile arrest, that somehow or the other, that case is going to get thrown out, and that's no good in a country which, as you know, is already, rampant with crime. We just can't allow this, especially violent crime. Right, let's get to some of your thoughts, which I'll pick up. There's another comment on the budget.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Ashraf, on the issue of the budget, I say there's a incompetence on the side of the Minister of Finance as well as the President, because they knew very well that there were differences between the ANC and the DA. The issue of the budget, they could have resolved it a long time ago, even before the budget speech on February. Those things could have been ironed out, but the President is not consulting. He acts as if he's still having a control. Thanks from Andile in Willowville, Eastern Cape.
Ironed out? How ironed out? I mean, that's why you got the minister there, and that's what you got others in consultation. That's why you have the Treasury. Clearly, whatever their plan was 2%. That was their plan. It was the public response and the political party's response that got a shift in we didn't really mean that.
Hi, Ashraf. JJ and Stax Priest. Ashraf, there's a madman in America there who thinks he rules the world. How can you sanction tariffs on Haiti? What does Haiti have? Lesotho. I don't think Lesotho is exporting to America. And an island, it has got nothing to do with trade with America, near Australia. Yeah.
Okay, well, you're dealing with a Trump who believes he's got the Trump card. 5:30 is the news headlines with Greg Hose.
Thank you, Ashraf. Trumping that with the headlines, the Director General of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation says the meeting between U.S. officials and the department's delegation was fruitful and cordial. And as you've been hearing, the U.S. President Donald Trump is imposing some of the highest tariffs on a number of the world's poorest nations. And back home, the Deputy President has stressed the importance of investing in skills and education. I'll have all those details and more at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 northbound in Pretoria, queuing towards Garsfontein Road. The M1 northbound in Woodmead, queuing towards Buccleuch Interchange. The N1 southbound in Centurion, queuing towards Brakfontein Interchange. Rivonia Road in Sunninghill, queuing at Fitkoppen Road. And Allendale Road, eastbound in Midrand, has a crash near Dane Road. In KZN, the M4 northbound has heavy traffic towards Glen Ashley. The N3 eastbound has a stationary vehicle on the link to the N2 south at Spaghetti Junction. The N3 southbound in Howick has a jackknife truck reported at Bulgowan, and Umgeni Road westbound slow moving through Springfield Park. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound has a stationary vehicle near the N7 highway. The N2 outbound has a crash before Bunga Avenue. The M7 Jakes Harville Drive southbound queuing towards the R300 highway. And on Baden-Powell Drive, sand reported on the carriageway at Monwabisi, so proceed with caution. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, Jimmy. So as we were talking about the Orlando Pirates coach, not being the coach soon, you've got other news about actual match play coming up soon.
Yeah, the Premier Soccer League has confirmed that Nedbank Cup semi-finals will be played on the 13th of April. Orlando Pirates will take on Maruma Gallants in the first semi-final at 3 p.m. at Orlando Stadium, while Mamelodi Sundowns will then play Kaizer Chiefs at Loftus Stadium in the second semi-final at 6 p.m. Meanwhile, reactions are coming in thick and fast to the news that Jose Rivero will step down as Orlando Pirates head coach at the end of the season. The Spaniard decided not to renew his contract with the club, which is due to expire at the end of the season due to personal reasons. And just reading some X's, Kagiso says a great artist leaves the stage when they are still relevant. Great loss for Orlando Pirates Football Club, but thanks Coach Rivero for your contribution towards the growth of South African football. Another X saying to all Kaizer Chiefs fans celebrating Rivero leaving, don't forget, you have your own problems. And finally, Doe says Orlando Pirates is the only club with coaches that can complete their contract and leave them peaceful with cups, not dramas. Root Grawl and now Rivero, other teams' coaches leaves cups and drama. Meanwhile, Owen Da Gama was named Betway Premiership Coach of the Month for March. This is after guiding Magezi to 4 wins and 5 outings. Magezi goalkeeper Elvis Chipezeze received the Betway Premiership Player of the Month for March after keeping 4 clean sheets in 5 matches. In cricket, the Proteas will tour India in an all-format tour in November and December. India will host South Africa in 2 tests, 3 ODIs and 5 T20s between the 14th of November and the 19th of December. The test series will mark a historic moment with Guwahati set to host its first ever test match. Then moving on to athletics, South African 110-meter hurdles champion Antonio Alcana says that he's aiming for his 11th national title at the Athletics South Africa Senior Track and Field Championship in Potchefstroom, and that is happening from the 24th to the 26th of April. Alcana kicked off his season at the Athletics South Africa Grand Prix Leg 1 in Tshwane last month, but was unable to finish the race. This is due to his recovery from injury. Now, the 34-year-old has been training extensively in Cape Town and now more determined than ever to reclaim his national title, ready to face the rising sprinters in the Northwest Province next month.
I'm trying to hopefully get my 11th national title in Potch. I always run good at that track, so I'm looking forward to it. Today I was actually feeling a bit tired, to be honest with you. I had a bit of a runny tummy on my way to the track here, so I wasn't 100%, but I gave it my best. I think it's just bragging rights, man. Nobody did it so as much as I did it. So yeah, it's just for the youngsters to look up to what I've been doing and try and do better than what I'm doing.
In tennis, American Emma Navarro says that she has put her name to a letter that is signed by the world's top tennis players, calling for significant improvements in prize money at the 4 Grand Slams as a way to ensure players receive equal treatment. Now, yesterday it was reported that top 20 ATP and WTA players had sent the letter to the Australian Open, French Open, Wimbledon, and the US Open recently, demanding more equitable distribution for revenues. While those at the top of the game are able to benefit from increased prize money, players at the lower levels, they often struggle due to a lack of steady sponsorship, as well as expensive coaching, travel, and accommodation. And I think it's absolutely noble for all these top players to also think about those at the lower levels. With that said, it is a wrap from my side. I will be back on Top Sport from 7 till 8.
And you're going to take calls on the Pirates coach?
Yeah, we'll hear.
And the new coach? Not yet.
No, not yet.
I see there's a piece in the I think from News 24 or something
About
like
pizza.
Well, it's about time they make that one call. That's most important. I mean, I'm just saying. Make that one call.
Listen, he is available after all, so we are yet to see if
He'd be sending them a please call me, I'm sure. I mean, if I were him, I would do that. Or a missed call, like just trying to, yeah. Well, let's see what happens. Okay, so 7 to 8, right?
7 to 8 on
Do
Top
not
Sport.
miss to me with Top Sports and talking about Orlando Pirates and everything else too.
With that said, ke nna Tumi Kgapele, Modimo ke yo.
From Engutu to a Durban, twins born with one dream, Maskandi greatness, millions, fame and family. Will money tear them apart or unite them? Brand new telenovela, Amalanga Wafani, starts April 2025, weekdays at 6:30 on SABC 1.
Hi, I'm Zycard. Catch me every Saturday from 7 to 9 p.m. on Spotlight as we bring you blow-by-blow sporting action, news. That's Spotlight every Saturday. You don't want to miss it.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, Jimmy, your show comes up, the SAFM Market Update 6 to 7, and you want to talk about many things then. But interesting, I mean, you want to talk about what Liberation Day and the fallout from that. Bit of a sense of humor considering the problems we've had in this country over the last day or so, isn't it?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners. You know what? Sometimes you may as well laugh through the pain. Something South Africans are very good at is laughing through a lot of pain, and there has been a lot of pain in the markets today. I don't know if it's enough that we can laugh through it. I choose to find some positives, and the positives that I'm finding is that the Rand didn't hit 19 Rand. It got very close, but is back at 18 Rand 76. The Brent crude price is back below $70. It's at $69.76 a barrel, and that's about it. That's where my positivity ends, because the rest of the markets were at utter chaos. The Nasdaq's currently down more than 5%, the S&P down more than 4%, the CAC 40 in France 3% down, the DAX in Germany 3% down, the SA Top 40 down 3.3%, the All Share down 3%, was down more than 4% at some stage, financials down 5%, resources down 2%, Bitcoin down 6%. So really it's struggled to find anything that is in the green today, and I don't think this is the response that President Trump had imagined would happen from a market's perspective. I think there was a misconception that the US markets would strengthen on the back of the tariffs, but markets clearly not happy with what has been said. And you'd think then perhaps in this current situation that something like the gold price would move up as markets move to safe havens. Hasn't moved up as much as you'd like it to. It's currently at $3,110 a fine ounce there. It was higher yesterday ahead of the announcement. So markets definitely feeling the brunt of that tariff announcement and that Liberation Day, so to speak, that it was yesterday. I don't know who really feels very liberated around it. The markets in London as well, not doing much better. They seem to be down the least, down almost 1.7% in today's trade. But by and large, everything has been centered around the movements, or at least from a market's perspective, around what has been happening from a tariff perspective and how we're going to respond towards that. So we're going to be unpacking that a little later on, and I think we're going to be doing it over several sessions. The unfortunate thing about something like these tariffs is that they have far-reaching effects, and we're going to try and look at as many of those effects as possible. So today we're going to take a look at this from an agricultural perspective with the team at AgBiz, because a lot of this would have been around the AGOA agreement as well, and some of those other implications there. So we're going to look at it from that perspective. But next week, I'm also going to look at it from the perspective of the tariffs themselves. I'm going to speak to the International Trade and Administration Commission, ITAC. I'm going to see if I can get the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition on the show as well. So we're going to unpack this in as much detail as we can, because clearly we need to be understanding what the implications are. It's not just enough to see a 30% blanket tariff on South Africa and think that we are safe. We need to look at some of the other implications. There were some interesting things to note from a tariff point of view, but we'll dig into these in the show a little later on. And it was around the fact that there were some items or some areas that were exempt from these tariffs, and these are areas where South Africa can really excel. So stick around for that part of the show. We're going to look at that as well. If we don't do it today, we'll definitely do it next week. We have also got conversations today with the team at Pan African Investments around the fiscal framework that was accepted yesterday by that vote that you and I were keeping a very close eye on. Even though the fiscal framework was accepted, it looks as though we are still set to see a budget revision to the VAT side of things and to the tax bracket creep on the personal income tax side of things. So I want to get a sense of what that means and what that kind of or where that kind of leaves us from a South African point of view. Then we've got an interesting conversation with the MMC of Finance in the city of Cape Town. They have announced a nearly 40 billion rand infrastructure investment plan over the next 3 years. I want to get a sense of where that money is coming to and where it's going to, and how they plan on rolling that out. It's quite a big infrastructure announcement. I think if you look at it in comparison to some of the other metros in the country, it is bigger than the other 3 metros combined. So it is quite a significant announcement from the city of Cape Town. We're going to see if we can take a look at that and try and make sense of that. And then we've also got a conversation with the team at Standard Bank about sustainable financing from their perspective. They have announced earlier in the week that they are looking at increasing their sustainability efforts and improving their efforts towards becoming carbon neutral or net zero by 2050. We're going to look at that from their perspective and see what it is that they're doing there. I think they said that they want to reach about 450 billion rand by 2028. They're currently around the 200 billion rand mark, so a lot of work to do there, and they're going to tell us how they plan to get there. And then because it is Thursday, we have an SME. This week's SME is a very interesting farming business, Maran Farming, out in Groblersdal in Limpopo. They are farming a new breed of sheep. So I'm going to speak to them and get a sense of what it is that they're doing there. But those are stories for when we come back a little later on. As I said, markets have performed quite terribly, and so I have a lot to unpack around why some of the markets are doing worse than others and why some of them might be a good time to get into if there is anything. I've got Nick Kunz from Sanlam Private Wealth with me on markets tonight, so we're going to unpack those when we come back a little later on. For now, Ashraf, back to you.
All right, perfect. And you enjoy your show 6 to 7 with talking money in the markets, really, with Jimmy Moyaha. And then, as you know, Tumi talking sport on Top Sport tonight, 7 to 8, including the issue of that Orlando Pirates coach. Is wise and what happens next. But of course, I need to take your calls. We'll do that right after this.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Lots of WhatsApp messages or text messages I need to get through as well. So voice notes, by the way, if you are sending out on WhatsApp, keep it to 30 seconds. It really gives us a good sense of being able to play out as many as possible. If you're calling in, one point that you called in always works best. So to do that, just, you should know the number now. Save it permanently with you, right? But you can certainly do that. And then, of course, you have the option to text message too. And you have the next option also to tweet out on the air too. But if you're a first-time listener and a first-time caller, therefore, I certainly want to know what you have to say about many things. In fact, here's one person saying, Madman in America. And another, Ashraf, please consider inviting Clem Sunter to unpack different scenarios regarding the GNU scenario. Well, let's see what happens after tonight or tomorrow, because, things change every single hour, doesn't it?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. The solution to the budget would have been a Donald Trump approach. Why do we have all of this bureaucracy? Why do we have deputy director generals? Why do we have deputy ministers? Why do we have a minister of police? Why doesn't the police commissioner just answer to the minister of home affairs like it is in the UK? Why do we have a Minister of Correctional Services? Why doesn't the Correctional Services Commissioner answer to the Minister of Justice? Why was the Department of Basic Education broken into 2 pieces? The list is endless. Well, I guess the ANC's answer would be, we were trying to provide positions of power to our comrades. Thanks, Lionel Whitbank.
Well, Lionel, you're asking lots of questions that many people ask every single day, don't they? The question is why, and why do we tolerate it too, isn't it?
Hello, Ashraf. No, I want to understand if there's a lack of evidence. Who is to be blamed? Is it the victim?
Which one did I miss?
Or is it NPA or is it charge? Let's say there's no enough evidence to convict. Who must be blamed? Because in this case of this Cherry Zondo and others, there seem to be an issue of lack of evidence. And no one is talking about that part. Anonymous, thank you.
The question really is, what is the cause of the lack of evidence that we speak about?
Hi, Ashraf. This is Mike Connors from Johannesburg. Regarding Orlando Pirates coach, I just want to appreciate the great work that he has done. But I'm sure when he leaves, Pitso Mosimane will step in and looking at the relationship that Pitso Mosimane has with Ivan Khoza. And I believe that Pitso will be the next coach, and that will be just as good. Thank you, Ashraf. Nice show.
Oh, thank you. So you got your next coach sorted out, and you're giving reasons of friends in high places as a factor. Here's another comment about friends in the GNU.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Spitzy from Pretoria. This whole story of GNU, which is about to disintegrate, and what are the likelihoods if you look at the possibilities that are available on the table? Either ANC will have to go with Action SA, or Action SA should go with the DA. Which way it goes, well, it's going to be in the best interest somewhat of the country. But should we go to the elections, I fear the worst. To be honest, then, to be honest with you, so many things will happen. The country will just go into total disarray. Anyway, that's me thinking. Visit from Pretoria. Have a lovely afternoon. It's drizzling in Tshwane. Bye.
Okay, thanks for the weather report as well. It's drizzling. It's fair weather all around the country then, isn't it? Thanks for that, Pitso, with your, the other Pitso, that is, with the GNU report. Here's another on the DA. They're meeting tonight.
Afternoon, Ashraf. It's Yandisa in Tembisa. The DA thinks we can trust them when they say they are fighting for the good economy and creating the jobs. Creating the jobs for who? For illegal foreigners. Because the Home Affairs Department is in DA minister. But they are failing to fight the illegal for immigration. Instead, they are hiring these illegal foreigners because of they are cheap laborers. They don't want to hire the South Africans, so they want to create jobs for illegal foreigners. No, man. We don't trust the DA, even if it can go out of that GNU and Herman Mashaba come in and take the Department of Home Affairs. It can be all right.
But here's a question to you. You don't trust the DA. Why do you trust the ANC, considering they've been the party that's been in power and therefore government for 30 years? Why would you trust Action SA when they made the point before they will never do any business with the ANC? And the DA said the same thing. I'm just asking, why would you do so? Right, here's another comment on the issue we've had earlier on about Omotoso.
Hi, Ashraf. Omotoso case, same, that gives us a clue of what will happen with the Bushiri case as well. Probably a clue, if we haven't gotten one already, of what would happen with the Guptas as well. Anyone with millions of friends in South Africa cannot face justice. If you have millions of friends in South Africa, you are immune to justice. It's a very big possibility that this is not an incompetence issue, probably a corruption issue. There's a very big possibility. So many charges and you walk scot-free because of a technicality. No.
So you think it's a corruption issue? This whole thing was just set up to be squashed and thrown out of court. I wonder who else concurs with that. By the way, we don't know, but let's just assume that the DA has the meeting tonight and they walk out of the GNU. Or let's assume they don't walk out, but the president decides to fire the ministers and the deputies that make up the GNU from the DA. What do you think the shape of South Africa's cabinet will look like? And it will be imminent, isn't it? It'll change. It'll absolutely change.
Afternoon, Ashraf and the listeners. This is Magdalene from Bloom. Ashraf, this case of Omotoso and its outcomes gonna be gazetted, and it's already gazetted, and it's gonna be used as a reference to fight in trying to win the cases by the perpetrators of raping and gender-based violence. I'm worried about the foreign nationals are now given a limelight to kind of pursue rape in South Africa to the South Africans as much as they can. And this case is going to be their reference to win the cases. Magdalene from Bloom, thank you.
Thanks, Magdalene. You really think so that this is going to send a message to foreign nationals to literally do what they want? I'm the optimist. I don't think so.
The Hammers want to ease off the pressure with collection of 3 points at the London Stadium to rise from the bottom half.
We picked out Socek, and there is the goal! And he's scored a few this season!
However, the Cherries believe a top half finish will be a good cherry on top.
Crosses towards the back post, looking for Tavernier! Who side-foots it past Vicario! And that is brilliant from Bournemouth!
This is the Premier League. Be part of the thrilling contest between West Ham United FC and AFC Bournemouth on Saturday, 5 April at 3:30 p.m. Live on S3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
These are the weekend shows on SAFM. Music of Africa with Shayla Ndikumana. The Jet Set Breakfast with Michelle Constant. Seasons with Khomotso KG Mweketsi. The Soundtrack of Your Life with Ernest Pillay. Weekend Soundowner Classics with Kutlwano Masote. Spotlight with Zai Khan. The Weekend with John Kherika. Rhythm of Africa with Shayla Ndikumana. This is SAFM. Call us on 086 000 2032.
Right, I'll take your calls in a moment.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. This is Jambas. I'm Fene from Western Cape. I'm just calling in to thank you, my friend, for that you give everybody in South Africa a platform. Everybody has a platform on your show. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it in the way how you treat everybody on the show. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the pulse, the National Pulse.
Very kind, Jamba, but sometimes we argue as well. But I mean, it's all for learning about where we are as a country, isn't it? So when people make sweeping comments, we do argue sometimes. But overall, it's never personal. I mean, I think what we want ultimately is to get a sense, to get our fingers on the pulse of the nation, and therefore to get a sense of what we're all thinking, or we learn from, and then we can, form our own opinions. So much appreciated, okay? Right, let's get to other callers now. Parktown is where we go to. Vuyizwa on the line. Hello.
Hi, Ashraf. Thanks for taking my call.
Pleasure.
You know what? There is some money that has been used to this case. The prosecutors must be really interrogated. They must be interviewed. They must be brought up to book, because there's no way you can actually go scot-free in such a case. It's impossible.
So you're saying there's corruption involved in that?
There was a guy who is a former Hawks guy who called is anonymous in KT Plathan is sure. He said the guy was living like a king. He went to interview him, in prison. He had everything, getting food from outside. Like everybody, he owned everybody in prison.
Okay, well, I got that. I mean, many people believe that your point of view may be correct. We have no proof for that. It would be very disappointing that it would be the case for Yizwa. Thanks for that call. Let's get to Mahikeng. Now, we crisscross the country. I mean, we had that call from the Western Cape. We go everywhere else. Imbawana now on the line in Mahikeng. Let's talk about GBV too.
Yes, hi, Ashraf.
Hello. Go for it.
Yes, yes. I was hearing one day to saying they want to move the age from 18 to 21 for the recognized marriage. So my question was, as the scripture saying there's no sex without marriage, and we know our children from the age of 16, they engaged into sex. So can't it be nice to reduce the age from 18 to 16, because why? To move the age into 21, then it means we are allowing more problems that we are having every day. Because you see, our kids are taking long to get into one another, into the marriage, but we're promoting prostitution and adultery instead of encouraging our kids to get married.
Well, I got that. I don't know about this issue about the marriage, lifting the age groups. I don't know about it. So, but I hear you, and I don't think it'll happen. That's what I'm saying to you. Imbawana, thanks for that. Let's get another call. We go to Durban. You see, there we are. We cross the entire country in 3 hours. Michael, go for it.
Yeah, Ashraf, how are you?
I'm good indeed. What's your point?
No, my point, I wanted to make a point with regard to budget. ANC cannot be proud of what happened yesterday. You can't win with a slimmer margin and then you go back and break. I think they must swallow their pride and just bring back DA to government and agree with some of the proposals that were brought by DA, because it's of no use to put the country in chaos just because we are fighting over VAT. So we were expecting that DA must leave jail just because of that. They must stay there, ANC must just follow, and they must know that they are no longer in power. They've got 40%, they brought down, so they cannot continue and play like a big brother over jail. They must learn to listen to other people that are part and part of the GNU. I want to make that point.
Okay, well, that's another point of view. I got that. And you're right, there's no time to gloat. They certainly shouldn't be gloating. There's nothing to gloat about. But at least they'll be satisfied they got a deal. Thanks for that call, Michael, in Durban. There's further comments about Donald Trump.
Good afternoon. Look, I think many countries of the world need to realize that Donald Trump is not the kind of person they can speak sense to. He has no capacity or the ability to listen and to reason. However, we are likely to see more old enemies becoming allies because of the conduct of Donald Tariff.
Donald Tariff. Okay. I did say before Elon Trump. Remember, that's another story. We use Donald Tariff. Enemies becoming allies, allies becoming enemies. Okay. Here's another on the judges.
Judges are not necessarily correct. Some judges have got emotions and feelings towards a case. Hence, there is an appeal system, which may sometimes go against the first judgment. So they are not like a computer which always judge equally the same way. Yeah, there can be some factors which the other judge in an appeal case or in a higher court may see things differently. So judges are not necessarily God. They are human beings. Emotions and feelings still do count sometimes.
Sometimes. We can't say they're not necessarily God. They're certainly not God. That we know for sure, isn't it? Yeah, well, however they deliberate, I mean, it will be based upon evidence. So it's not just like a woman offensive, right? Here's the last one I want to pick up on, and it's got to do with the deportation of Omotoso.
Okay, greetings, Ashraf. I hear people say that the pastor Omotoso must be deported. Deported on what basis? What is the basis? Is he here illegally or legally? Because it seems that they want him to be deported for a reason that nobody knows. He was acquitted, as far as I know. He's not guilty of any crime. He was acquitted in court. So why should he be deported? What did he do wrong?
You've left the $1 million question for us to end the show. Let's leave it at that. Let's see if others have a thought on that issue, which we will pick up tomorrow. But don't forget, the show is 24/7. What I mean by that is, if you just go on to, just tweet using the hashtag #TheNationalPulse, you can share content, comments all throughout the night, and we'll certainly pick it up as long as you tag SAFM Radio and myself. Thanks for being a part of the show. You're all part of a team that puts it all together, and you, as the voice of the station, well, you're really important in the role that you play in reflecting the national pulse. So until tomorrow then, goodbye, good night. Here's Greg Host with the news at 6.
Thank you again, Ashraf. In this news update, SA delegation meets with US officials and Mashatile speaks on the importance of education. Good evening. The Director General of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, Zane Dangle, says a meeting between US officials and the department's delegation was fruitful and cordial. Dangle, who's just returned from Washington, met with senior White House and State Department officials where they discussed current tensions between the two countries. He says discussions will continue.